Two, hello. Hello, folks. Well, normally I keep people waiting a little bit longer. This is the Wednesday of Rib. We'll see. We'll see, Gen X Bushy. We will see. Normally I keep people waiting a little bit longer, but I'm going to level with you, chat. I'm going to level with you. I got a really good sandwich here. I've been talking about this sandwich now for a couple days. I had one of these sandwiches on Sunday. It's this Turkish kebab place that I've never been to until before Sunday. One of the best goddamn sandwiches I've ever had in this city. And there's a lot of good sandwiches available in the city of Montreal. One of the best food cities in the entire world. So, I'm hungry. Haven't eaten I ate like some grapes earlier. Haven't eaten a whole bunch. Before the stream, I went up for a little stroll. And I picked up one of these bad boys. And I'm really looking forward to it. Pelicans, it's called Mon Istanbul. It's called Mon Istanbul. I was telling you, it's like a kebab. Like I was saying, normally they do a kebab in like a pita bread. That's usually the style around here, which I guess would be Lebanese. And this is a Turkish place. And like I was saying, they got this bun here. They got this like a kind of hollowed out bun. And here, like they fill the sandwich, put stuff inside, and they put like this top back on there to kind of seal it off. That's French for my Istanbul. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. For those who don't parler en français. Anyway, here we go. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm very hungry. Haven't eaten all that much. Let's do this. Oh. It's like a nice little pouch containing all the major food groups. Absolutely, yeah. And there's some garlic sauce. There's the chicken, which they slice off from the big rotating thing. They have like an electric slicer, which is great. I like when they have the big sword, just in terms of authenticity. I remember when I was traveling around Europe, you'd always see the little neon guy with the sword. I always loved that. Lots of good veggies in there, though. Lots of salad, some tabbouleh, some spicy peppers, some, I think that's pickled radish, the pink things. Lots of really good stuff in there. Tabbouleh. Fantastic. This is just so good. Like, I can't even tell you. They have a bunch of good stuff there. Like, it's not like a super fancy place. It's just like a little kebab shop, but they also make like pizza. They make fried chicken. They make like submarine sandwiches. I want to try all this shit. Like, I'll bet the fried chicken is deceptively good as well. And there's some very good fried chicken in this neighborhood. I would say in this neighborhood that I'm in right now, there is some of the very best fried chicken in the entire world. I would actually say that. I would be totally comfortable saying that. Some of the very best fried chicken that you can get anywhere on planet Earth in this neighborhood. How are you doing, chat? What's everyone else's lunch's situation? Let's have some lunch together. Let's have some lunch together. What's on the menu? It's so funny because the Turkish guest workers were invited here to Denmark at the same time as Chilean refugees started arriving, and both groups were mocked because they smelled of garlic and put chili in lots of foods. And today, all self-respecting Danish families put tons of garlic and chili in their food. These goddamn immigrants forcing us to like put spices and flavor and taste in our food. Bringing all their cultural practices and like seasoning. This is just phenomenal. I'm gonna stick with fermented shark penis or whatever. Yeah. You can keep your garlic and chili. I'll stick with my fermented shark penis. The urine smell is how you know it's ready. This is really good, folks. Don't want to keep harping on about this. This is fucking tremendous. And look what I got here as well to wash it down. I got a Rain Energy Rainbow Sherbet. Ice cold to wash this sandwich down with. Hell yeah, 10,000 sandwiches. Twinsies. You know what else I want to try? Which I'm sure I can get in this neighborhood as well, but I haven't really checked. Is, what is it? Bimbap? Bibimbap. Or sometimes known as kimbap. Which is like Korean sushi. Bibimbap. Kind of like the Korean version of sushi. A few subtle little differences. It looks fucking really good, though. I think I would like to get some very soon. This is just falling all over the place. It's okay. It's more like Korean poke, kind of, but there's a million different ways to do it. I mean, when I Googled it just now, I don't doubt that it's very different, but it's like wrapped up in it's a Korean seaweed rice roll. And it's wrapped up, the ingredients are wrapped up with the rice and seaweed, and it's cut very similar to sushi. So visually, it resembles sushi a lot. Okay, bibimbap is the bowl. Okay. Okay, no, sorry, I was referring to gimbap. Gimbap, also known as kimbap. So the bibimbap is like those kind of ingredients, but more in a bowl. Okay, I get it. I get it. I was confused. I'm still learning the ins and outs of the Korean cuisine. This is just so good. Like I'm sorry. I'm sorry if it offends you. Does this offend you? This sandwich, my delicious sandwich, or are you gonna cry? Are you offended? What's everyone else having for lunch? Got any other lunch situations going on right now? This was absolutely worth it. The bread, really good. They really do a good job of like making sure the garlic sauce is touching all parts of the sandwich as well. We got leftover fajitas. Envy Adams had pizza pockets. No breakfast and pizza pockets for lunch. That is indeed a poor healthy eating day. It's okay though. I haven't had a pizza pocket in many years. I remember I used to be a fan of the pizza pop. You know? The pizza pop. I think they did a disgusting advertisement where they like threw it at the screen and it like exploded on the screen and exploded sauce and cheese and stuff everywhere. Remember that? That pizza pop advertisement? Wow, that was absolutely fantastic. That's really good. I mean, that was enjoyable. I think it's more enjoyable to go take a little stroll through the park and eat it at one of the park benches there, but this was totally adequate as well. Anyway, chin chin. I'm just going to wash this down with this ice cold energy drink, and I'm already looking forward to that. I don't know if it's just me. Sometimes I really do eat or drink things though that I can feel the good brain chemicals. You know, I just had that like garlicky, spicy sandwich, salty. And as I was swallowing the ice cold, fizzy, sweet rain, I just like went, I just had like a ASMR experience. I got all the good chemicals coming down there. Excuse me. Is rain Canadian? I don't think so, because I've seen it in America, and I think they actually have more flavors in America that they don't even have here. This flavor just arrived in Canada recently. Oh boy. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to be ready. Now we're going to be ready to do this thing today. We got some big important discussions to have today. Now I'm really getting started on the right foot here. Okay. Yep. Yep. So, I don't know, nothing really new small talk to report, folks. What had happened last night? After my kid went to bed, I've been meaning to do more CyberRob 2077. Like, I want to play the game, like, to say nothing of doing the stream and, like, having people follow along with it. But, you know, it's been the NBA playoffs. So I just generally, most nights when it's the option, I just want to sit down and enjoy the NBA playoffs. Like I've said, it's the first time in many years that I've kind of like paid close attention to all the non-Raptors games and like followed along, which has been very enjoyable. So most nights, I've been doing that rather than doing the stream. But I guess once that's over, I will get back to doing Cyber Rob 2077. Lakers beating the Warriors is, I can't even tell what that emote is. Is that a laugh cry? I know how it goes. My kid is in basketball, so things are just calming down enough to breathe a bit. You mean he's in basketball and he's been watching the NBA playoffs? Yeah, I don't want the Lakers to beat the Warriors. Like the Warriors are 4-time champs. It's not like they're underdogs or anything like that, but I just fucking hate the Lakers. I just hate the Lakers. I want bad things to happen to them. I want their fans to be disappointed and upset. The Mickey Mouse Championship does not count. It doesn't count. You know, they won a little tournament at Disneyland. Congratulations to them. It's not a real NBA championship. I think everyone knows that. I think everyone understands that. And same with the Celtics. I don't really like the Sixers either. I don't really like the Sixers or their fans either, but I dislike it. That's just pretty much what my investment is in these playoff games. It's just like who do I like the least, you know? It's not like I really like anybody. What team and what fandom do I like the least? Do I want to look at them, see the tweets about them being upset, you know? I hope Boston loses in 6 and I can go and look at Bill Simmons' feed and see him freaking out and getting upset. You know, bad things already did happen. But to the Lakers, not enough. Not nearly enough. If you ask me. On a team and watching, so lots of running around. That sounds cool. I tried to get my son, like, how Larry, how old's your kid? I tried to get my son 7. I kind of tried to get him into basketball. I never want to be pushy with that kind of stuff. 12 almost. Okay, so it's a big difference. Yeah. Because this was when he was still not even 7 that he was doing this. And I'm here just in time for Rob to mock Kobe's memory. Hated Kobe. You know? Fucking hated him. You know? Thoughts and prayers to his family. Obviously, but like, no. I'm not gonna turn off my Kobe dislike just because of certain tragic incidents that happened. Yeah, so that's the thing. I don't want to be pushy about sports, like with my kid, either with watching or playing. You know, if he wants to watch, like, I'm gonna watch it sometimes. If he wants to watch it with me, that's great. We tried to put him in basketball, last fall, I guess. Didn't go super well. He just didn't seem super into it. It seemed it was tricky. There was a lot of other kids that had like been playing a lot more, you could tell, and he was just, he's just kind of getting started. He's barely learning the basic fundamentals of like dribbling and stuff like that. He's also not the most coordinated guy already, so I think it's just hard for him, and he felt kind of like discouraged and didn't really like it all that much. And I don't want to be a fascist about it. Don't go do your basketball, go compete and win. And it's like, no, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm a Kyle and Jimmy guy these playoffs. I think that's generally where I'm going to. And I don't really like the Heat or their fans either, but it's like, it's hard not to root for Jimmy. Kyle Lowry is someone that I have an attachment to, and a certain just love and respect for, no matter what team he's playing for. I've loved seeing all the angry Nick comments about Kyle Lowry taking charges and like being a pain in the ass. That's given me a little bit of a good feeling, you know? Just seeing all the Nick fans freaking out. Kyle Lowry getting in the way, is always taking charges, flopping. It's like, that's my guy. That's my Kyle. I see dads like that at the skate park even. That's so weird. Yeah, it's like, fuck, just like let your kids just enjoy themselves. How about that? They're not going to enjoy themselves when you're screaming at them. Here's a question. What do you do if your 4-year-old doesn't want to go to soccer, but you're coaching the team? I don't want to force him either. That is tricky, old Dutch. I think the thing that you would do there is just like, you know, with as little pressure as possible, just be like, well, we made the commitment to do it for this period of time. You know, even if you don't like it all that much, it's going to be a good experience. If you don't want to do it again after, that's okay. But while we're signed up for this thing, let's just both try to enjoy that. Let's just both try to have a good time. And then after, if you don't want to do it anymore, then we don't have to. It's okay. That would be my approach. Oh. That's our house every Thursday night. I coach both teams, and they both have such terrible attitudes. What is that, Matt? Basketball or soccer or what? I'm trying to give them incentives to come, like getting to play on the far more interesting grass hill afterwards. Okay, soccer. I see. Yeah, that's got to be tricky. That's got to be tricky. I would like to be a basketball coach. I think I could be a good basketball coach. I think I could be pretty good at that. By the way, old Dutch, you sent me a DM like a week or two ago, and I just want you to know that I'm not ignoring it. Every time I see your name in the chat, it's like, remind myself, get back to old Dutch about that thing, and then I forget or whatever. It's not because I'm being a dick or I'm big timing you. Okay? I promise. Just so you know, okay? Just so that's clear. My son has been in soccer for 5 seasons now. He hasn't improved at all. I'm just trying to get him to improve in one thing at this point. Well, is he having fun? If we're working on running, yeah, we can do that. How old is he, Dakadoon? Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, 7 as well. Yeah, I had a hard time just like getting my kid to dribble. Like dribbling the ball. He found that very tricky. Excuse me. Oh, that was such a good lunch. God damn. Sorry to keep harping on about that. It was just tremendous though. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. I think, you know, I had meant to do it yesterday. Drifting into the last minutes of Chit Chat Zone. Sinchal, I ate such a good sandwich and you missed it. I ate a very good sandwich. If I could at least get them to run around and chase the ball, I'd be stoked. Somehow, what do? Do they just kind of like hang out? Do they just kind of like hang out? Because that's the thing. I was like going with my kid, and I go and sit there, and I try to encourage him and stuff. But I think I was watching him one day when they were running drills or something, and I just saw him like looking up there, and he's like spinning around in a circle, and he's talking. He's like running lines. And I can just see him like singing and talking about like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or whatever it is that he's obsessed with. And I think I had a moment where I was just like, he's just not into this. He's just really, he would rather be anywhere else than here right now. And that's okay. He is going to, he's doing like a theater camp for 2 weeks this summer. He's doing a theater camp. I'm looking forward to that. I think he's really going to enjoy that because he loves acting and performing and that kind of stuff. I never grew into that phase of sports. And yeah, some people don't. Some people just aren't sports people. That's okay. You know? I was kind of both. I was always both. I was a sports kid, but I was also an indoor kid as well. My guy just wants to be building Lego. Yeah. That's the thing. I spent a long time, playing video games and doing inside stuff, and I would also go and shoot hoops in the driveway for a couple hours a day too. Hey, what's up, Squatch? Yeah. I liked being social, but hated being athletic in front of people. I definitely would always... I enjoyed, playing in front of people, but I felt like I was never as good as when I was in practice. I would always freeze up a little bit in the game environment when the pressure was on. But we did have, this was in 12th grade. Yeah. In the town I grew up in, we had the whole, we had the crosstown rivalry, with the school, the classic, high school crosstown rivalry. I had a few game winners as well, Brian. That was a good feeling. Crosstown rivalry championship game to put us into the fancier tournament that goes into the Eastern Ontario thing or to move on. And crosstown rivalry game, end of the year, we're down 22 at halftime. Nothing's going right. Nothing's going in. Fucking Nico Geisbers is just dropping threes on us. He was pretty good. Down by 22 at the half. Home game. Crowd completely dead. Just embarrassing. And then second half, charged back. Came storming back. Cut it to 11 going into the fourth. Came back. Ended up winning by 4 or 5. Crowd was electric. People going crazy. It was pretty cool. That was fun. I wasn't the star of that one. I think I had 10. I had 8. I had 8 points and a couple rebounds or something. I came up in the second half. I had a couple of jumpers, but I was more of a glue guy. I was more of a glue guy in that situation. I was a good locker room presence. Fat Pussy came up huge. Of course. He's more in the after party. He wasn't into the athletics. He was bringing the beer to the after party. You had some clutch moments, Rob, and that's what counted. Those hustle plays matter. That's what I think. All 8 points came in the second half. I remember I hit a 3. I hit a couple of free throws down the stretch. Imagine Fat Pussy. I have a few smokes at halftime coming out strong. He's boxing people out. Right? He gets those elbows, that wide stance. Boxing people out for those big rebounds. Made dunks like the rim owed him money. Well, I appreciate that. No, I could never dunk, though. Dunking was always my dream. It was always my dream to dunk. I really, really wanted to be able to dunk. I've talked about before. I had those plyometric shoe attachments and everything. I really, really wanted to be able to dunk, but I never could. Not on a 10. I dunked probably on a 9-foot hoop. Not on an official regulation hoop. Now I just dunk on the libs. That's right. Doing those chicken wing rebounds. Make sure exactly. Creating space. Are we actually watching? Because I know we have an expedited movie night schedule. Or schedule. Okay, we don't have anything for today though. Okay. I thought maybe White Man Can't Jump might have been tonight. That's actually June 14th. Okay. Looking forward to watching White Man Can't Jump with the community, though. That's one of my favorite films.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Apparently one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite films as well. Will Menaker once told me that. Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub to our friend Leaping Larry. Our new friend Leaping Larry. White Man Can't Jump was recently added to Disney Plus in Canada, and I'm pumped. Not recently, old Dutch. It's been there for a while. It's been there since I think they added all those Fox library films. Rosie Perez, like that's what, like you're talking about like Rosie Perez. Rosie Perez is just fucking fantastic in that movie. That's why. What you're doing the new White Man Can't Jump with like Jack Harlow and like who else? You're really trying to replace Woody Harrelson and fucking Wesley Snipes and fucking Rosie Perez with Jack Harlow? Really? Really? No one is going to watch that. I actually at one point came up with a whole sequel to White Man Can't Jump. That's what I think someone should hire me to write White Man Can't Jump 2. I had a whole sequel planned out. Where an aging Twitch streamer also has a side hustle as a weekend warrior basketball hustler. No, that's not true. That wasn't the story. That wasn't the story. If you want to hear what the story was, though, I'll tell you, okay? So you start off. The film starts off. It's Woody Harrelson. You know? 30 years later. He's still looking all right, though. He's playing in some ratty gym somewhere, playing a pickup game. It starts off. That's when the film starts off. It's getting rough in there. A lot of trash talking. The classic kind of White Man Can't Jump thing. Okay? Woody's talking smack. He's hustling guys. At one point, you know, he like pisses someone off. They pull out like a makeshift shiv. And all of a sudden a prison guard comes in, breaks the whole thing up. Everyone's getting beat up. Oh shit, they're in prison. He's in prison. He's playing a pickup game at like the gym in whatever prison that he's in for some scam, some hustle or scam that he got caught up in. He's just on his way out. That's the first like 10 minutes or whatever. So he gets out of prison, and you know he owes somebody. He's in deep to somebody, right? Someone did a favor for him in the joint. He's in deep. He owes like $20,000 or something like that to some bad people. Yeah, he's out at the yard. He finally got caught. Exactly. It's a little bit like how Ant-Man starts. A little bit, yeah. So Billy Hoyle, he gets out of prison. He's in deep to some bad people, and he looks up his old friend, Sidney Dean. Now like a respectable businessman, family man, living in the suburbs. And he tries to pull Sidney back into the lifestyle of hustling on the courts. One last run for Billy Hoyle and Sidney Dean. Right? to get Woody out of debt from some of the bad people that he's in deep with. I don't know, the rest writes itself, okay? The rest I don't have a whole like complicated 3-act structure or anything like that. That's just the basic idea. If someone ever agrees to pay me to do it, then I'll figure out all the rest of it. You get the idea though, right? He's behind me, isn't he? Maybe he can try and win back Gloria as well. You get her back in there as well, right? She took her investment in her Jeopardy winnings and she invested into something and she's super successful. Maybe on the rocky, coming out of a bad marriage, bad divorce. So he's simultaneously trying to pull Sidney back into the hustling lifestyle, and he's trying to win back Gloria again, who hasn't spoken to him in years. She's a counselor at the prison who helps him escape. Yeah. I don't think he would escape though. I think he's getting out. He's on his way out. He's on his way out, but he's got some guy that's just like, once you get out, you find me for that 20K you owe me, or else, you know, we're gonna break your legs or whatever. Anyway, that's it. The rest writes itself. There's some ups and downs, you know. At the end of the second act, it looks like all is lost. He owes the Russians. That's good. I like that. I like that. You know, it thinks like all is lost. Maybe he gets beat up. He's walking out of the hospital and Sidney Dean's there. Snipes. All right, fine. One last run. Huh? Who wouldn't watch this? Isn't this so much better than like the bullshit that they're trying to do? Come on. I got ideas. Did Snipes do worse stuff than tax evasion? I don't think so. They're trying to con a team. Turns out he's playing against Luca. Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, that could be good, too. Like, he wants to get Sydney back into it. You know, it doesn't work out. And so he's got some other part, some unreliable, like, running mate, right? To run these scams with. But, of course, it goes terribly. He has an opportunity to make back all the money to pay the Russians, and the guy fucks off. The guy messes up. Loses everything. All the work that he's been doing in the first two acts to, like, build up the money that he can pay off this debt to this Russian gangster. Loses it all. End of the second act. He's just fucked. He's just totally fucked. And then Sidney Dean shows up. That's the basic idea. A Russian gangster named Putin. Absolutely. I'd watch the shit out of that. Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't? Of course you would. Jack Harlow should be the baddie. Yeah, that would, like, you throw him in there, I guess. Yeah. Give him something to do. This new one just looks terrible, though. Looks awful. No one's gonna watch it. Anyway, that's my pitch for White Men Can't Jump 2. Idea to a prequel right here. A young Tom Cruise, 100% CGI, has to steal an F4 and fly to Vietnam to save his pilot dad who got shot down. He blasts the Beach Boys throughout the movie, and we may face some lawsuits from having watched Iron Eagle, but still. I don't know if I ever saw that one. Iron Eagle. Would it be called White Men Can Jump? I don't think so, no. Because, like, if he couldn't jump in the first film, now he's like 55 years old. He for sure can't jump now. Maybe he can, in an echo of the first film, get one dunk in there in the climactic game. No. Just dropped in after lunch. I had no idea what that was that you were pitching. There we go. I am excited to watch White Men Can't Jump with the community, though. Honestly, it's such a fucking great film. Absolutely love it. Have you watched White House Plumbers? No, I haven't. Is it any good? Oh, White Man Can't Jump 2. I like that with the TOO. That's kind of interesting. "60-year-old Woody getting a dunk in." We can do it with movie magic, you know. When you see it on the screen, you'll believe it. All right? You believed it when in the first film when you did it, and it was probably on like an 8-foot net. Here, I thought we were talking about The Air Up There. Is that the one with Kevin Bacon? Okay, yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen that one. I remember more from like I've probably seen the trailer a bunch of times on some random VHS. I don't think I've ever actually watched the film. Or I remember seeing the VHS like cover at the gas station or at the movie rental place or whatever. No, the mic's not a Blue Yeti, Brian. It's a Shure. It's a Shure. I don't remember the model though. It's like it's like one of the cheaper models, not the super fancy one. It's back to me. Oh boy. Oh my. My comment got deleted, but Iron Eagle is the most 80s Reagan era movie in existence. Is that the one with, I want to say, Lou Gossett Jr.? Is he in that? It's so weird that there's all these films that I've never seen, but I still know. I just remember the VHS cases at the gas station or whatever. I don't think I ever saw that one. I haven't even thought of Lou Gossett Jr. in so long. You see what I mean? How I have this photographic memory for like character actors and like random 80s and 90s films that I haven't even seen. But now I have no more room to hold that information anymore. Now when I learn some actor's name or whatever, it's just gone immediately. It's like when I meet someone in real life. I meet someone in real life and they're like, "Oh, hi, my name is," and I'm just like, remember the name. And then 5 seconds later, it's like, I don't know what it is. I could not tell you that person's name if someone had a fucking gun to my head. 0% chance I could remember their name. It's so annoying too. Even when you're telling yourself, right? It's like you're telling yourself, please. Just remember. Sorry, we got street cleaning and we hear this really lovely sound outside the window right now. Sounds like a fucking chopper's landing directly outside. Okay, it's going away. Good. You can't hear it? Oh, that's kind of amazing, actually. Logistically, I don't even know how that works. So this has been fun. Yesterday I was running lines. I did the whole Alec Baldwin monologue from Glengarry Glen Ross yesterday. Now I'm pitching my sequel to White Men Can't Jump that I've been thinking about for a couple years. Hello, Slam Dunkins. What is up? What is up? Keeping the streets clean like Stallone's Cobra. That's another one that I haven't seen. I haven't seen that whole film. I remember I was watching a clip of it the other day where he like goes back to his apartment that he lives in, and he's like cleaning his gun, and he eats a piece of pizza, but he cuts it with scissors. This like cold piece of pizza is like sitting on his countertop. He's like wearing his aviators inside and cleaning his gun and cutting a piece of some scissors. Cobra, very damn Reagan era too, for sure. It's really amazing when we think about the films, not even of our childhood, because this is still going on every single night on network TV. It's propaganda, but the whole genre of like 70s and 80s and 90s cop films are just like. I mentioned Will Miniker earlier. I saw him tweeting about this with about Law and Order. This same kind of thing, right? Where it's like cops need to be able to use unlimited violence on, people that they suspect of committing a crime, and all these goddamn commissioners and like the worst people of all, internal affairs. Internal affairs. These fucking snitches who are just getting in the way of people doing good, honest police work. That's like the point of like every cop movie. These cops are like just driving around, fucking firing guns and machine guns, chasing guys around, doing a high-speed chase for like people that have just robbed a jewelry store or whatever, shooting out of the window and everything. Just like there's people running around terrified, And you're watching it going, yeah, they should be allowed to do that. Absolutely. All the people that are telling them to not do that are bad to me. Everyone here loved Cobra because Danish actress Bridget Nielsen was in it, and she was later married Stallone. I was not aware that she was Danish, Diego. I just remember her from Mortal Kombat. Training Day, one of the most honest cop movies. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Faced with internal affairs, there's nothing worse. You've got an internal affairs person already up your ass, stopping you from like doing good, honest police work and jumping around and like flying through the air and shooting your gun with like pedestrians around, but they're a woman at the same time. Wow. You really know they're going to be a ball breaker, right? Untouchables destroyed American police. Every cop thinks he's Elliot Ness, breaking the rules to protect the law. The first rule of policing: make sure you go home at night. Is that from Untouchables? That's interesting, because I know that is a big part of like the cop mentality, the cop ethos, this whole thing. That's why they feel justified in just murdering anybody that they perceive as a threat, even for a moment. That's why they value their own lives more than like kids that are being killed by school shooters, because it's like, well, we just got to go home at the end of the day. That's all that matters. And if that requires us to like allow kids to get shot, or it allows us to ourselves shoot kids, well, it's equally as justifiable. Like that's a big part of their whole mentality. And you've got a very compliant population that grew up watching these 70s and 80s and 90s cop movies that are like, that believe that they need to have that kind of ability. Which is weird because I thought protect and serve was the whole fucking point, but they definitely cash in on that bravado, but they don't do anything to fulfill it. Yeah. I mean, if you ever think the cops abide by the whole protect and serve thing, though, just go like ask them for basic help. Go ask a cop for like directions or something. Or if a cop's like closing off the street being like, hey, what's going on with this? What are you doing? What are you doing here? And see what they have to say to you. The whole serve the public part, they kind of forget about that. They're like, get the fuck out of here. Stop bothering me. Yeah, I have to tell you, what do you want me to do about it? Yeah, there we go. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm just going to go get something else to drink. And then maybe we can actually start talking about our important business today. Because we've been covering this story for the last couple of weeks about this, like, these just, it stretches back beyond this whole thing about accusations of China interfering in, like, Canadian democracy or whatever. We've been talking about that a lot, but, it goes back, like, the whole balloon thing and the freak out over that. It's all part of the kind of like panicking about China spying on us or interfering. The secret Chinese police stations thing. China's interfering in Canadian democracy. It's all kind of part of the same genre of story that seems to be escalating. So that's been continuing and escalating even more here over the last couple of days. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that today. I'm just going to get a drink. Just one sec. Fuck. The secret police stations thing started in the Epic Times, didn't it? Then it got more mainstream. And we've seen there's been actually like reporting on what those actually are, which is like these like cultural centers where they're helping members of the Chinese diaspora like get driver's licenses and like helping them fill out forms and stuff. They're secret Chinese spy stations or whatever it is. Like, fuck off. And yes, it is a pineapple, Venus. It's a pineapple bubbly. Operated runner in everyone's noses. So stupid. Yeah, job training too. We really freak out about the Chinese like helping people with like learning to doing job training. It's really upsetting to us when this happens. I'm sure America is so helpful to Chinese migrants trying to get licenses. Yeah, seriously. I mean, I imagine it must be kind of nice if you're an immigrant in a sort of different culture, inundated with different culture and different language, that you've got some people that you can go talk to help you navigate some of these things, It Is that so bad? Is it so bad to maybe have that service available for different ethnic groups or migrant groups? Caring for your citizens, not only when they live in your nation, but when they live in other nations as well. That's the really crazy thing. Falun Gong provides some translation in civil service. It's kind of how they get new immigrants in. Well, that's interesting too, because it's like you see how what counts as Chinese interference in our democracy or whatever, or this insidious, nefarious Chinese threat. When you've got Falun Gong, filling our parents and our gams heads with all kind of insane right-wing propaganda, this like religious cult reactionary CIA-linked movement. Yeah, of course, they can go in, they can publish their little newspapers, deliver those to all our parents and gams or whatever, advertise on YouTube. I'll throw all kinds of attack politicians and doing whatever else they're doing. Of course, doesn't count as anyone interfering or this kind of like nefarious element gets turned down. But when the Chinese state is like lobbying or, contacting diplomats or helping their citizens fill out forms, then we have to like freak the fuck out about it. My gam is the one filling heads with filth. Well, that's good to know. That's good. The NYPD has detective stations in 13 stations around the globe. And listen, if you're going to freak out about these Chinese police stations, then I'm sure we would have no problem with China or Venezuela or wherever, Nicaragua or any of these places. I'm sure we would just have no problem. Or Russia, any country that's not even socialist countries, any country that we're kind of like trying to destabilize, just throwing out all the NGOs, all the Western linked NGOs, all the Western linked media outlets, like what we saw with Ortega in Nicaragua. They're just throwing out all these Western backed media establishments, and then we go, whoa, it's authoritarianism. They're attacking freedom of the press because they don't have patience for this anymore, and they're just throwing out. We're trying to like fund these reactionary media establishments in these places, and they're like, no, fuck off, throw it out, and we complain about it, But then when there's a place to help Chinese citizens fill out forms, then it's something we need to really get upset about. We'll massacre all the scum you have. Remember that? Oh, you're upset. Oh, you're upset. That will always just be a legendary quote, no matter what happens. Extremely critical support for that. Obviously, extremely critical. But man, you can't really deny the potency of that. I'd be honored to host a secret police station for any adversary country in need. I agree. Yeah, I'd be happy to as well. Okay, I was very thirsty. Very thirsty. I think that maybe this is a better headline here. I think that works. I'm going to crack the case. That's right. So I got a couple things that I wanted to look at about this. Let's get started here. So we've been covering this story for a while. This whole like smear campaign against MP Michael Chong. We saw that really disturbing video a few weeks ago where he was like pretty much forced to take some kind of like a loyalty pledge. It was incredibly disturbing to see this guy like standing up and crying and being accused of being some kind of foreign agent. And we looked at the way that this has been relentlessly promoted in our media and how every single one of these stories, every single one has been linked back to CSIS, to like the Canadian Intelligence Service. And there's been this like concerted effort on the part of our intelligence agencies to create this narrative about China, not only interfering in our democracy, but interfering on behalf of the Liberal Party of Canada. Which I look around and I feel like that's a little bit of a disturbing thing. It's a little bit disturbing that CSIS and our intelligence agencies are like openly kind of helping to manufacture this story, openly just like targeting Chinese Canadian MPs, suggesting that they're like disloyal or that they're doing the bidding of the dreaded CPC or anything like that. It's an incredibly slippery slope. I think it's really fucking disturbing. And not only are, liberal MPs being caught up in this, but I think this is how like Chinese Canadian, the diaspora starts getting suspected of these kinds of things as well. And really any Asian, like culturally Asian person living in Canada, because obviously it doesn't matter whether they're Chinese or not. If people can misconstrue them as being Chinese, they're going to be dealing with the same level of harassment and suspicion. Because we live in this deeply racist society. So it's been a moment of like feeling really like unsettled by this whole thing and realizing how no one seemingly in our mainstream media or political establishment really has any issue with it. And in fact, they all seem to be encouraging it across the ideological spectrum. Where we're now accusing MPs of doing the bidding of the CPC and accusing China of interfering in our democracy. To what end? Well, we don't really know. That's never really been clear. Like the idea that, as we talked about in that interview with Justin Porter, the idea that the Liberal Party has been like soft on China or not hostile to China is fucking preposterous, considering it was under the Liberal Party. They're the ones who basically kidnapped Meng Wanzhou, after the United States State Department basically commanded us to because of the Iranian sanctions that we had nothing to do with. That's what started this whole like diplomatic spat with China. We locked up one of their nationals at the behest of the U.S. State Department, and they responded by scooping up two of our guys, the Precious Michaels, if you remember. We all remember the Precious Michaels. And that's how this started. And like our whole media and political class have been totally on board with like this increasingly hostile environment when it comes to China. Our media was slobbering over themselves to talk about the democracy-loving Hong Kong protesters. The NDP and the Conservative Party came together, reached across the aisle to formally accuse China of doing genocide in Xinjiang with the Uyghur population. Like this has been going on for a couple of years now. And, again, the Liberal Party has been a big part of that. We've done exactly what the U.S. State Department told us to the entire time. And there's still this narrative that being promoted that somehow the CPC, to what end, again, we don't know. To what end, we don't know. But the CPC has been somehow promoting or supporting liberal MPs or the Liberal Party. You got the stuff with Michael Chong, and you've got the the stuff with the Trudeau Foundation, and all these kind of accusations that are flying around. Again, all coming from CSIS. So that's what's happening. And now, let me just find the tweet that I want to look at here. Now, the recent escalation is that now we've expelled this Chinese diplomat. This was May 8th. It officially happened. We expelled this Chinese diplomat, Zhao Wei, who is apparently the diplomat that had this contact with Michael Chang. And there's certainly, just as there was consequences for kidnapping Meng Wanzhou, there's certainly going to be consequences for this as well. And I'm sure Canadian diplomats are going to be expelled from China, at the very least. I mean, it's just an example of the way that our diplomatic relationship with China is going in the opposite direction of the way that it should. You know, China, as they're emerging as this global power, this is a country that we should be forming deeper bonds with, strengthening our ties with China, maybe trying to learn something from their unprecedented development that they've had over the last 30 years, even over the last 10 years, which is, it seems like it's escalated even more. Yeah, the Canadian diplomat was already expelled. Okay, so we'll get to that. So we'll get to that. So we're going in the opposite direction. Like now we've locked up their nationals. They've locked up some of our guys. This is going on. Our intelligence agency is accusing them of interfering in our democracy. We're kicking out diplomats. They're kicking out our diplomats. This is the opposite direction of where this should be going. You know? So this was, May 8th, Canada has kicked out Zhao Wei, the Chinese diplomat associated with the Michael Chang story, as per Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly. The Liberals announced the diplomat's expulsion right as the House was voting on the CPC Oppo Day motion, which includes calling on the government to kick him out. So this was May 4th. The Conservative Party put forward an Oppo Day motion calling on the government to bring in a foreign agents registry, call a public inquiry, close down the Chinese police stations, there it is, and expel Chinese diplomats involved with foreign interference. So basically, before they could vote on this, the Liberals just say, okay, we'll get rid of this guy. And they kicked him out. Text of the motion: that given that intimidation tactics of the People's Republic of China are being deployed against many Canadians of Chinese descent, who's intimidating these Canadians with Chinese descent? Number one, we're saying the PRC is the one intimidating these. It kind of seems to me that like our intelligence agency and our media and our political class are the ones that are actually intimidating these Chinese diaspora communities, where we're suggesting that they're like getting radicalized via WeChat and we're forcing them to like take loyalty pledges and things like that. What the fuck are these Chinese police stations? Do they really have stations in foreign countries? As we've talked about, there's been reporting on this. These are like cultural centers where they're helping Chinese, like members of the Chinese diaspora in Canada and elsewhere, like fill out forms and get driver's licenses and things like that. That's what these devious Chinese police stations are. Yeah, it's like when I heard Chinese police stations in Canada, I burst out laughing. People buy this shit so easily. And if there were Chinese police stations in Canada, I would think that it was good. I would have no problem with that. Yeah, Epic Times says they're kidnapping people, and since we totally need to take them seriously, let's just all believe that. Freedom for Basuria. That's right. That's the new fake country, the new fake culture that just popped up. But yeah, so the People's Republic of China intimidating Canadians of Chinese descent, when really it's the Conservative Party of Canada along with the NDP and really everyone in our political establishment and our media and our intelligence agencies that are intimidating these diaspora communities, which are widely reported and well established through the House of Commons committee testimony and reports by Canada's security establishment, including reports indicating that families of members of parliament are subjected to an intimidation campaign orchestrated out of Beijing's consulate in Toronto. The House call on the government to stop delaying and immediately create a foreign agent registry similar to Australia and the United States of America, establish a national public inquiry on the matter of foreign election interference, which of course will never be applied to the United States of America or Israel or Saudi Arabia or any of the countries that does have this completely outsized influence in our political system, to be clear. This like farcical idea that we're going to start taking foreign interference in our democracy seriously when we're literally basically an arm of the United States foreign policy. Close down the People's Republic of China run police stations operating in Canada and de-expel all the People's Republic of China diplomats responsible for and involved in these affronts to Canadian democracy. Sponsored by Pierre Poilievre, who I'm sure is going to get really tough on China if he ever gets to be PM. So of course, right before they vote on this, the Liberals say, okay, we're going to kick out this diplomat. Find my other tweets about this. And here you have Arnaud Bertrand talking about this. So here's Melanie Joly. Canada has decided to declare persona non grata Mr. Zhao Wei. The Honourable Melanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, today issued the following statement. Canada has decided to declare persona non grata Mr. Zhao Wei. I have been clear, we will not tolerate any form of foreign interference in our internal affairs. Diplomats in Canada have been warned that if they engage in this type of behavior, they will be sent home. And like, what are foreign diplomats do? Like, Canada has diplomats all over the world. Like, what do these diplomats do? Don't they like engage with the local government, engage with the diaspora community, try to like stand up for the interests of the nation that they're serving? Like, isn't that just basically what diplomacy is? But some of it gets called interference and some of it is just basic diplomacy. Like, what the fuck are Canadian diplomats doing around the world? Are they just hanging out? Are they just hanging out and doing nothing? Like, what are you doing? What is your job? If you're a Canadian diplomat in China or Saudi Arabia or fucking Oman or Chile or wherever the fuck you are, like, what are you doing? You're representing Canadian interests wherever you are, right? That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing that you're doing. So when China does this, it's electoral interference. This decision has been taken after careful consideration of all factors at play. We remain firm in our resolve that defending our democracy of the utmost importance. And yeah, so Arnaud Bertrand puts this into plain English. His crime. An anonymous source told Canadian media about an intelligence report claiming that Zhao Wei was helping gather information on MP Michael Chong and his family, speculating that this could be for the purpose of making an example of him. And that's all. That's what this is over. And this is a good point as well. What sort of message do you send about your country when you make allegedly gathering information a fault so grave it gets you banished for life from the place? Again, like what are these diplomats doing in other countries? Your role as a diplomat is to lay a wreath at the victims of communism memorial. Your job is to help the various Michaels in all dark corners of the globe. That's right. The diplomats are in a country to promote the capitalist interests of their country, maybe a few other functions, but they're secondary to the former. That's what I mean. It's like the way that this basic idea, this basic concept of engaging in diplomacy like this is being framed as this like nefarious, terrible thing, which Canada does all over the world. I mean, Canada, talking about foreign election interference. Again, as I talked about the last time this came up with Justin Trudeau, Canada, a key member of the Lima Group, where we, remember, appointed some fucking guy to be president of Venezuela who had no support and no constituency and was unelected and no one had voted for. Remember that? Does that count as like interfering in democracy or foreign interference? That's what Canada does, right? When Canada was training and arming proxy militias in eastern Ukraine to kill Russians, does that count as like foreign interference? Like, apparently it doesn't. But of course, this one diplomat gathering some kind of information about this MP, that's something that we got to expel him from the country for. And again, if you think that this is just this like reactionary conservative thing that the liberals are bowing to the pressure, no, it's not. No, it's not. Of course, the NDP, as I mentioned, they came together with the conservatives a few months ago to formally accuse China fucking ridiculously of doing genocide. And now you have the NDP criticizing the liberals for not being fast enough on this. Like they're trying to get to the conservatives right on this as quickly as possible. That's what the NDP is up to in this moment, while simultaneously promoting this like stop Asian hate narrative as well. You contribute to that and then you claim to be against it at the same time.
I think that it is appalling that it has taken the government 2 weeks to do what they should have done.
MP Heather McPherson.
2 weeks after
NDP
pressure from
MP.
all parties in the House to register the Chinese diplomat as person non grata. This is unacceptable. Taking care of Canadian safety, making sure that every member in this House can do the job that they need to do is vital. And frankly, my concern is that we have information about this particular diplomat. We have information about attacks that have been made against Mr. Chong and his family. We don't know if there are others. We don't
The attacks are coming from CSIS and from the media. Like, what are these attacks she's talking about?
know if there are other examples. You know, there are members of the Chinese Canadian community who have been warning about interference, been warning about intimidation for decades. And so the fact that we are just getting this action now is appalling. Listen, I think
Trudeau should start juicing and get hella ripped to intimidate CSIS operators. That would be pretty sick. If he did a couple cycles, that would be a good look for him. And yeah, of course, because these like reactionary anti-Chinese diaspora groups that we've cultivated in some cases have been ringing alarm bells about this. You know, all the official NGOs to protect, you know, democracy and freedom in Hong Kong, whatever. They've been warning about this. So we have to pay attention. Yeah, they absolutely have been showing their ass on this. And again, it's like they came together with the conservatives to formally, in our parliament, accuse China of genocide. The NDP did this. MP Chong have become under China's sanctions in 2021, something he said that I'll wear as a badge of honor after calling China to end its human rights violations. Accusations that now mostly stand on nothing more than the allegations from the China expert Adrian Zenz of the Victims of Communism Foundation. And that's what I was saying before too, like when it comes to this guy, Michael Chong, and then he ends up like, talk about intimidation. Like the idea that like, if you're Chinese Canadian and you suggest, you know, if you take a stance that's like pro-China in any way, this is now the climate that's being set up where if you are Chinese Canadian, you're going to be accused of like, oh, have you been influenced? Have you been intimidated into having this position? You have to hold these you can never say one positive thing about China. You can never hope to like work with them. You can never try and push back on any kind of allegations that are being made about human rights. Because if you do, now you're going to be accused of like having dual loyalties. You're going to be accused of like being influenced or intimidated. Like, talk about who's doing the intimidating here. Who is doing the intimidating, right? Like, there's plenty of like non-reactionary Chinese Canadian diaspora groups that probably do support China that are being intimidated right now from ever actually showing that support in any meaningful way or material way, because they know once they do, they're going to get all these kinds of accusations. You know, and we've seen the same thing with Michael Chong. Look at this. The guy that was under this cloud of like suspicion of foreign influence, and now you have him on Twitter. Not only is he out there talking about how he's like a loyal Canadian, he would never betray Canada or anything like that, but now he's out there on Twitter talking about Canadian membership in AUKUS, a time for action, sharing this piece from, ironically, CSIS.org, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, about how now Canada needs to be part of this new anti-China military alliance in the South China Sea. So, you know what I mean? Where is this intimidation coming from? Where literally there's a campaign coming from our intelligence community and our media and our political establishment that is targeting Chinese Canadian MPs and diaspora residents. And the message is getting across loud and clear that you have to be as rabidly anti-China as possible. You can never say one positive thing. You can never have one positive thing to say. You can never encourage diplomacy or try to like tamp down on this kind of like growing climate of like mistrust and suspicion. You have to be as reactionary as possible, or you're gonna have all these accusations thrown at you about having dual loyalty or being intimidated or coerced by China by the PRC. That's the intimidation that's happening right now. From CSIS, of course. CSIS. At the height of the Cold War in 1962, Admiral Arleigh Burke and David Abshire founded the Center for Strategic and International Studies at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. The institution was dedicated to the simple but urgent goal of finding ways for the United States to survive as a nation and prosper as a people. But when this Chinese Canadian MP shares this idea coming from this think tank, suggesting that Canada needs to join this military alliance in the South China Sea, that doesn't count as electoral or democratic interference in our government or in our political establishment. As always in these moments, just looking at where the funding comes from. That's always the thing that really interests me in those moments. Funding. For fiscal year 2013, CSIS had an operating revenue of $32.3 million. 32% corporate, 29% foundation, 19% government, 9% individuals, 5% endowment. And look at that. Look at that, folks. In September 2014, the New York Times reported that the United Arab Emirates had donated a sum greater than $1 million to the organization. Additionally, CSIS has received an undisclosed amount of funding from Japan through the government-funded Japan External Trade Organization, as well as from Norway. After being contacted by the Times, CSIS released a list of foreign state donors, listing 13 governments, including those of Germany and China, funnily enough. And the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, lists major funding from defense contractors such as Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon, and General Atomics. Big fucking surprise. So you see what I'm kind of getting at here? You have a Chinese Canadian MP. He's accused of having these like secret back channel to the CPC. And that they're somehow like controlling him, or he has some kind of dual loyalty. He gets accused through these anonymous allegations coming from our intelligence agencies, promoted endlessly in our media, gets accused of having this kind of like dual loyalty, or double allegiance or whatever. And then as a result, as these accusations are flying around, and he's literally being called like a double agent, his loyalty is being called into question. He has to take these like public kind of loyalty oaths, like unofficial public loyalty oaths, and then to show how fervently anti-China he is and to how pro-Canada he is, he's out there sharing white papers coming from a think tank sponsored by these defense contractors, arguing why Canada needs to be part of this military alliance in the South China Sea. You know, Do you see how fucking insidious that is? Do you see where the intimidation is coming from? Do you see who's doing the interference in our democracy and who isn't? You know, it's clear to me. I know it's clear to you, but it's one of those moments when you look around, you read all the replies under these tweets, and you see it doesn't seem to be clear to anyone else. And that most people are just buying this narrative, again, being promoted by both CSIS, the intelligence agency, and this think tank, coincidentally named the exact same thing, that we're under this kind of insidious threat. Our democracy is being interfered with. So now we've got on Monday, Canada declared China's diplomat Zhao Wei persona non grata and ordered her to leave the country. In response, China on Tuesday ordered the removal of Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, Canada's diplomat in its Shanghai consulate. Canada reserves the right to further react, Beijing said in a statement. Both diplomats have 5 days to exit the countries. And again, this is like, as this new Cold War is expanding, the tensions with the Chinese are like exploding. We're going in the opposite direction of where we should be going. This Taiwan situation is heating up. It seems like many Americans are like almost predicting or counting on that to eventually explode in the same way that Russia-Ukraine has. And again, rather than like forming deeper ties and bonds with this burgeoning superpower, which is what we should be doing, we should be making deals with China to come in and, help us build infrastructure, which is one thing we've proven repeatedly that we don't have the political will to do or the capability of doing in the first place. Rather than doing any of that, this is where we're going. We're expelling diplomats. We're losing this diplomatic relationship, going completely in the wrong direction, and once again shackling ourselves to the dying U.S. empire, rather than doing something that's actually going to benefit everybody, not just like Chinese Canadians, but like would benefit everybody around the world if we actually had deeper bonds with this country and deeper diplomatic ties rather than what we're doing. By the way, I just can't help but notice, look at that, yet again, BBC, on just as a side note here, advertising this other article here, defending the last Ukrainian streets in Bakhmut. And look at that, a Ukrainian militia member with the UPA flag on the patch, just to make it clear what side we're on when it comes to these conflicts. They can't help themselves. They just can't fucking help themselves. I believe CSIS was also doing a lot of legwork for the Uyghur genocide narratives. I mean, I know they were involved with it, Vlad, but what was doing a lot of legwork, though, is that they were having these hearings in Parliament about the Uyghur genocide, and all the official representatives that were brought in to testify about this were all connected to these like NED-backed or NED-backed NGOs and think tanks, sponsored by the state and sponsored by the arms manufacturing industry. That was the scandal there. All that whole genocide accusation was all based on testimony coming from Uyghur expats, not people that live there, obviously, but like these official Uyghur representatives who are attached to these NGOs that are backed by the NED and backed by the arms manufacturing industry. Yeah, the one who reads the UPA flag there, it's the Banderite flag, like it's the symbol of the Ukrainian UPA was the sort of militia or the insurgent army that during World War II, prior to and during World War II, helped carry out the Holocaust. As you can see right here on Wikipedia, where they often try to hide this information. That's where the whole Slava Ukraine thing comes in. You see this section in the Wikipedia article about massacres of Poles in Volhynia and Eastern Galicia. So in that black and red Ukrainian flag, it's the UPA colors for the Ukrainian insurgent army. the non-Nazi Ukrainian nationalists that were just helping the SS carry out the Holocaust, you see. Again, this is why we have monuments to these SS divisions in Canada, because we imported scores of these folks into our country after the war. Anyway, that's a side note. It's just I couldn't help but notice that in this article about this. Cannot help themselves. And I wanted to take a look at, let's look at CBC's coverage of this, because they've been, of course, talking about this.
China has declared a Canadian diplomat persona non grata. In a statement posted just after 1 o'clock Eastern Time, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said the move was a direct response to Canada's expelling a Chinese diplomat after reports he targeted the family of a Canadian MP and that MP himself. Beijing has now ordered Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, a Canadian consul based at the Consulate General in Shanghai, to leave the country in 5 days, May 13th, the deadline. China's foreign ministry posted a statement in English, and it says, in part, China strongly condemns and firmly opposes this and has lodged serious démarches and strong protests to Canada. As a reciprocal countermeasure in reaction to Canada's unscrupulous move, China decides to declare Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, consul of the Consulate General of Canada in Shanghai, persona non grata, who has been asked to leave China no later than May 13th. China reserves the right to further react. So we're covering this story in detail for you this morning. Janice McGregor in Ottawa, Patrick Falk in Singapore, and Patrick is going to lead off our coverage with the latest on what we heard today from China's foreign ministry.
This was swift and decisive action that was taken by China, really confirming some of those concerns that you had there in Canada about what sort of countermeasures China
of
might
course they're
take
going to have
if it
countermeasures.
went through with its decision to expel a Chinese diplomat, which is, we know, is what's happened. We did hear...
But the thing is, though, their diplomat deserved to be expelled, whereas ours didn't. That's the big difference, you see. That's the big difference. They responded to this very nefariously. We did nothing wrong, and our diplomats are being expelled, whereas we're expelling diplomats for very good reasons. So...
a bit more from the Foreign Ministry in Beijing earlier. As we know, Jennifer Lalonde has been given until May 13th, 5 days to leave the country. Similarly, Jiao Wei, the Chinese diplomat at the center of the storm in Canada,
shit and got hit confirming fears. I mean, it's the same thing with the two Michaels. Like, China has made clear that they're not going to tolerate any of these like colonialist countries, these former colonialist countries like Canada, to fuck around with them or throw around these kind of accusations or lock up their nationals. They're not going to tolerate that. And they shouldn't. Why would they? They shouldn't tolerate that. Like, who do we think we are? Right? We think that's the colonialist mentality, right? As I've pointed out many times. There's, by several times over, more members of the Chinese Communist Party than there are people living in this country. And we still, because we have this like junior partner role in Western imperialism and hegemony, we think we have the ability still to like lecture them or to engage in this kind of like these diplomatic maneuverings, locking up their foreign nationals, expelling diplomats because they're interfering in our democracy. And we just expect them to just take that. We're going to accuse them in our parliament of doing genocide. Fucking Canada is going to accuse China of doing genocide in our parliament, and we expect them to just say, oh, thank you. Oh, we're so sorry, Canada. Thank you for correcting us about this. Like, we really expect them to react like that. It's the height of this kind of like colonialist mentality, arrogance, We really think that they're just going to like take that line down. Like, they're not. This is an emerging global superpower. They're not going to allow themselves to be disrespected like this by fucking Canada of all places. It's fucking preposterous.
as well. We did hear from the Foreign Ministry making it clear that this was a reciprocal move, but at
Just
the same
as the
time,
two Michaels
we weren't
were.
given any indication as to why Lalonde was lined up in particular to be sent away from the country. From what we understand, she is of a similar level to Jiao Wei, so perhaps that it is a sort of direct tit-for-tat move, and it's been made clear that that is what's happening.
Farquaad. I know that sums up our whole foreign policy.
About whether or not
That's
she
not
might
the
be
editorial
actually of
line
a
of TRRS,
higher rank than Jiao Wei was, but
we are in the China good camp over here, which is so funny because I've seen these people that are like trying to walk this line, not supporting the new Cold War. I saw Ben Burgess doing this a couple of weeks ago, and it made me laugh. Doing like, well, no one actually supports no actual Western leftist that's serious supports the Chinese Communist Party, but, and it's like, who doesn't? I do. Of course I do. I absolutely do. But it's funny when people try to walk this line of being like, China bad, but we don't need to do this like new Cold War kind of thing. Which is just an incoherent argument, right? Yeah, they are bad, and they are this dystopian sweatshop of the world, and they are doing genocide. Just we shouldn't do anything about it. That's the incoherent, like Western left style of viewpoint on this.
Certainly, this wasn't an unexpected move. As I say, the Chinese
Western
embassy in
leftists
Canada
lecturing
had
China
previously
about what
said
socialism
that it
is and
reserved
is
the
not.
right to take strong countermeasures, and it has also said previously
Hilarious.
that the claims that are being made by Canada are baseless, and said that it's a blatant slander against China.
That's Patrick Falk beginning things from Singapore this morning. Now let's bring it back home because we'll see today it's Cabinet Day, for example, and we'll be awaiting further comment from ministers as they arrive on Parliament Hill, what further reverberations there will be in Parliament today. Janice McGregor is in Ottawa to take us through what we saw yesterday. Certainly, Janice, some dramatic scenes in the House.
That's absolutely correct, Heather. And frankly, this issue now has consumed the House of Commons. All other debates on any other topic are on hold following a ruling.
Chinese interference. Nothing's more
Anthony
important. There's nothing more important going on in Canada right now than figuring this out. We got to make sure we get to the bottom of this. Let's just drop everything. Everything else is going pretty well, right? Right? We got everything under control pretty much in Canada. Our healthcare system's going great. Our housing situation is just excellent. Everything's going well. Why even talk about anything else? Let's just focus on this.
Yesterday that found the government's handling of this situation breached the parliamentary privileges of MP Michael Chong. The Conservatives' outspoken criticism of the government in Beijing, and specifically Chong's vote condemning China's treatment of its Uyghur minority, made his extended family in Hong Kong a target for China's Toronto consulate. And Canadian intelligence officials, we now know, knew about this, briefed certain people anyway inside the government, but no action was taken until it all became public last week. Now,
so correct me if I'm wrong here for people that have been following along with this, but like it seems like this story's kind of shifted. Because a couple weeks ago when we were covering this, the story about Michael Chong was like he was too soft on China. He was going through these diplomatic back channels. He was saying we need to keep the Michaels locked up until after the election. That was the accusation, remember? And now it kind of seems like a couple weeks later, like that's shifted. And now he's too tough on China that they're targeting him and targeting his family members. Doesn't that seem to be like a complete inversion of what this story was just a couple weeks ago? Like, am I crazy about that? Now he's like, he was so anti-China with his voting record. Okay, was that Han Dong? Am I just getting them confused? Okay, so it was Han Dong a couple weeks ago. He was the one that was being accused of being too... That was the diplomatic back channel thing. And then Michael Chong is now saying that, like... So, I'm sorry, it's just so confusing. Like, if you actually back up and take a look at like what China's nefarious strategy is here, right? They support the Liberal Party. They Han Dong is too soft on China, and he's being forced to take these loyalty pledges. I'm sorry for getting confused about this. He's the one that's taking these loyalty pledges and being forced to defend his accusations. But then another Liberal MP is too hard on China, and his family is being targeted because of his tough on China stances, both in the same party. Is that about right? Oh, okay. Okay, this makes so much more sense to me now. Okay. So Michael, that's interesting. Okay. So, okay, this is on me for, I guess, some of this stuff snuck up on me. I found this story a little bit confusing. But this actually clarifies things a lot. So Michael Chong, a conservative MP, the shadow foreign affairs minister. So both of these cases, though, is going hard. Okay, so Michael Chong is going hard backing CSIS. Yeah, and now promoting this narrative about joining AUKUS. Okay. So both of these narratives do seem to kind of like promote this idea that liberals equals liberals being soft on China, Han Dong being compromised, taking these loyalty pledges, also the Trudeau Foundation getting donations from Chinese nationals as well, and the conservative Chinese Canadian MPs are too tough on China and are being targeted for their toughness and their tough stances. So there is this like narrative being promoted by CSIS, and I'm sorry for getting this wrong. I feel a little bit stupid that I didn't like write down all the stuff ahead of time. I apologize if I've been spreading misinformation or fucking this story up. But I think it is kind of clear the narrative that's being promoted, which is liberals soft on China, conservatives tough on China. And you've got this Chinese electoral interference are kind of like contributing to both of these narratives. And all of this is coming from CSIS. All of this is coming from accusations being made through the intelligence community, which is still, like we were saying, is absolutely amazing when you look at the Liberal Party's actual stance on China, which has not been soft on China in any way, as we were saying up front. You know, we've totally gone along with what the United States State Department have been instructing us to do on this. That's what started the whole thing with the two Michaels, with Meng Wanzhou and all that stuff. So now you have this narrative being promoted by CSIS that the Liberal Party is soft on China. They've been slow on figuring out this problem of electoral interference, and our tough conservative leader like Pierre Poilievre and our MPs like Michael Chong are so tough on China that China is scared of them and are trying to intimidate them out of taking these tough stances. Do I have that right now? I think I maybe have figured this out a little bit more now. And that's kind of an amazing narrative, though, that's being promoted by our intelligence agencies. Like it's specifically partisan. It's painting this picture about the liberals and the conservatives and what their values are and what their stance is with respect to China. And like no one else seems to be alarmed by this, that our intelligence agency is like taking these steps and promoting this narrative in our media. I think that's kind of alarming.
Threats or harassment designed to somehow...
Liberals have also historically really liked Chong. He's always been the civility guy pushing for more civility in the House. Okay. And that sounds very Canadian.
Intimidate or influence the votes of elected officials, influence what they bring to the floor of the House of Commons, say or do. That is very serious in a democracy that claims to be free. So now MPs are debating
and again, that's
exactly
just basic
what they're going to do
diplomacy.
about it. Here's opposition leader Pierre Poilievre and the NDP's critic as well. Take a listen.
This agent not only went after a member of this House.
I would fucking love to see Pierre Poilievre try and get tough with President Xi or any other major Chinese diplomat. This fucking worm, this fucking nerd. I would love to see him try to get tough with China and just get absolutely fucking demolished. You know, like, he's such a dork. And again, this is this burgeoning global superpower. And like, we're still like, these nerdy pieces of shit are suggesting that they're going to be super tough with them or they're intimidated by them somehow. That's the narrative that's being promoted, right? That China's just so intimidated by the Conservative Party. They must have the Liberal Party at all costs because the Conservative Party is going to get so tough with them. Fucking yeah, right. Like, Jesus Christ, the idea that they care at all is just patently hilarious. Has Chen dunked on Pierre yet? Well, I would hope so. No, Pierre is promoting. He's not going hard at CSIS. He's like promoting this. He's saying, why didn't Justin Trudeau listen to CSIS? Why didn't he listen to them? Our brave intelligence agents have been ringing the alarm bells about this for years now. And Comrade Trudeau has been slow to act on it. I wonder why. That's what he's basically saying.
But sadly, may have targeted countless other families.
And the safety of Canadians, the ability of parliamentarians to do their job has to be protected. That is a very bare minimum that we expect from our government.
So we will await further comments.
No, Michael Chung. So I had this wrong. I wasn't paying close enough attention to the story, which I feel a little stupid about now. So Michael Chung is he's a Conservative MP, and he's the shadow foreign affairs minister. So he's like the Conservative foreign affairs critic in waiting, basically. And basically the narrative being promoted by CSIS and by Poilievre is that Chang was like so tough on China with his stances that he's taken that they're like trying to intimidate his family back in Hong Kong. And they're gathering information about his family to use against him.
As like those today, as I say, Janice, with attention on what happens on the Hill today. As we wait for that and see what comes of this sort of more broadly, the Liberal government is still under pressure to do more. Do we expect more from Canada?
Well, this is exactly what I think ministers are going to face questions about on their way into cabinet. Look, Michael Chung himself believes that the government still isn't taking this seriously.
It shouldn't have taken this long. It shouldn't have taken 2 years for the government to make this decision when they became aware that members and their families of the House of Commons were being targeted by the PRC and by persons in Canada accredited by the Government of Canada as diplomats.
All the opposition.
How were they getting targeted? Like, what was actually happening?
Worked together to pass a motion.
What was actually happening to these people?
They was debated last week. It was not only calling for the expulsion of any diplomats responsible for this, but again, calling for a full public inquiry on the issue of foreign interference. Now,
for sure, let's keep doing this for the next couple of months and years.
Considering this, David Johnston, he is required to report back inside of 2 weeks now.
Well, his opinion's important, Dr. Maggot, because apparently, according to our intelligence agencies, he's been so tough on China, taking these tough stances, you know, voting, for instance, to condemn or accuse of them of genocide for their treatment of the Uyghur population, or, you know, criticizing them for their brutal crackdown on human rights in Hong Kong, or whatever it is, that they're now intimidating him. They're gathering information on his family that they can use against him, according to our intelligence agency, who have been promoting this narrative in the media. That's why they're asking him about it. They're targeting by the Havana syndrome, Ray. That's right.
But in the meantime, that motion that passed yesterday also demanded the
I'm just gonna
government
get a
create
water,
a
one
foreign
sec.
agent registry. Now, they're consulting about that, but they haven't actually done it yet. It also demanded stronger enforcement action to ensure that Beijing cannot operate de facto police stations in Canadian cities that are used then to harass diaspora communities. And Heather, we also have 2 separate House committees today meeting to continue their investigations on China's attempts to interfere with Canada's democracy.
Janice, thank you very much. Obviously, a key issue that we'll watch in Ottawa today with your help. Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. Charles Burton is with me now, former diplomat at the Canadian Embassy in Beijing and an expert on Canada-China relations. He's a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. He's in Ottawa this morning. Welcome.
From the Laurier Institute, of course. I'm sure he'll have a very nuanced view of this. And as always, like when you see these stories, I would like for CBC, when they're doing this big 15-minute piece, we'll see if they do. Well, it's half over. Maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe they will. Maybe actually talk to a representative of the PRC about this, about getting their perspective. Maybe talk to someone from another kind of think tank that might be asking critical questions about this narrative. That's one thing that I would like to see in our supposedly like unbiased, non-state media apparatus. You know, if you're going to do this big 15-minute story, where basically the assumption being promoted here is that China's interfering in our democracy. Like how much? A lot or a little? How much did Trudeau know about it? A lot or a little? That's the narrative that's being promoted. Are we going to hear from someone from the PRC about this? Are we going to hear from someone else that's going to present an alternative viewpoint? That's the question. Somehow I don't think so.
Welcome to the program, and thank you for giving us some time today.
Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Let's begin just with your overall reaction to these moves from Beijing, expelling a Canadian diplomat from the Consulate General. What is your sense of your reaction to that move?
Well, I mean, that's completely to be expected and consistent with the norms of diplomacy that, you know, if we expel one of their people, they will expel someone comparable in China. You know, nothing unexpected or unusual about that. I think what we have to look at is if China will go beyond that and engage in some kind of spurious trade sanctions, violation of trade contracts to try and punish Canada, or indeed if we see any action taken against Canadian citizens in China, you know, up to even the kind of thing that happened to Michael Kovrig and Michael Staver. If that happens, of
is this
course,
going to be another two Michael
accelerate
situation?
The process inside Parliament to try and seriously address Chinese malign activities in Canada. We could really start to accelerate towards a foreign influence registry so that people who are involved in the Canadian policy process would have to declare publicly if they're recipients of money or other benefits from a foreign country.
This is a diplomat, though. You're talking about a diplomat. Like, we already know that they're a foreign
Indo-Pacific strategy to try and contain China's
it's not a secret.
violations of the international rules-based order. So, you know, if I was advising China, I would say leave it there. If they do more, I think that they will really accelerate the focus and do something about what China's been doing in Canada for quite a long time.
I did know that was the last line of one of the statements. We got a number of statements decrying Canada's egregious behavior and unreasonable provocation, for example. That's the kind of language used by China. But the last line, China reserves the right to further react. And you've just laid out a series of possibilities and could. What is your level of expectation that China will respond in that manner?
Well, I mean, they
That's
typically
right, what
do
he
the
reads,
wrong
yeah.
thing, and I think they might repeat it again. Certainly, they'd want to send out a strong signal to other nations that if you crack down on China's influence, harassment, and menace operations, espionage operations, that China will extract
and menace
economic
operations.
and other costs. So, you know, it's quite possible that that's what they will do. I certainly hope not. I'm concerned about Canadians in China who might be subject to some form of arbitrary arrest or harassment. And, you know, I think it would be a bad time for anybody to travel to China until the dust settles on this thing.
I would be happy to.
Are you thinking in terms of short term, you know,
the dust is not going to settle. Like, we're just, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. There's no dust settling.
It'll be within the next week. We'll take China, figure it out.
You heard Janice and I speaking about Cabinet today. It's Cabinet Day on the Hill, and there will be questions to the ministers as they arrive. You mentioned a little bit about what you would advise the Canadian government to do, but what should Canada's next moves be? That'll likely be the question to those ministers today.
Well, I mean, I think that, we've been sort of virtue signaling on China. We say that we're going to have an Indo-Pacific policy that will form a reset of Canada's relations with China. But we announced that back in November, and we're not seeing any movement on it. And we also have been talking about having some kind of law comparable to those of the UK, the US, and Australia, so that people who are recipients of benefits from a foreign state who have influence in the policy process would be required to declare that. And I think constraining Canadian politicians and senior civil servants from taking money from foreign states after they leave public service is maybe some kind of reward if they, put reports from CSIS about Chinese malign activities in the back door and don't act on them. So, I think that it's time for us to get serious and focused on this. And I think that, this might be stimulated by Mr. Johnston's report on May 23rd, but it might also be stimulated by the Chinese government really coming down heavy on us and further exposing the nature of that regime and the fact that it's really very hard for us to cooperate with China so long as they engage in behaviors towards us.
It's always them, right? They're the ones being belligerent. They're the ones being aggressive. It's always the same fucking thing, isn't it? Like, while we have now Michael Chong sharing white papers from think tanks funded by the defense contractors, urging Canada to get involved in the military alliance in the South China Sea, along with the U.S. and Australia. But it's that doesn't count as being belligerent, right? It's always them being aggressive, them being hostile, them being belligerent. It just never fucking changes.
Just so out of sync with the norms of the international rules-based order. And, harassing Michael Chong's family has really crossed the line. That
who's been harassed by the PRC? Like, what's the actual details of this? Is it just an accusation from CSIS? Oh yeah, they're finding information on them. But what is this harassment though? Like, what has actually happened? Can anyone explain that to me? Like, what has actually happened to Michael Chong's family in Hong Kong? Is the PRC really so concerned about this conservative MP and the damage that he might do? Like, what is the accusation actually? What is this actual accusation here? The PRC, President Xi and everyone in the PRC, all the higher ups, are just laying awake at night. Oh no, this conservative MP is getting so tough with us. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? He's exposing our whole operation here. We got to go after his family. Michael Chong doesn't even want to know. It's literally just CSIS, the intelligence agency, is saying like, oh yeah, they're gathering information on his family. This is this harassment that's being described here. Yeah, the international rules-based order again, for sure, yeah.
I think they will regret having crossed.
And you heard in the lead up to you, as part of Janice's reporting, Michael Chong saying, critical of the government for taking as long as it did to act, 2 years after it was aware, and even with increasing pressure on the current government, not expelling that diplomat until just yesterday. How would you evaluate the timeliness of Canada's response?
Well, I think that, regardless of whether the information reached the Prime Minister's desk or not, ultimately the Prime Minister has ministerial responsibility in this matter. And the fact that Mr. Zhao Wei, the Chinese diplomat stationed in Toronto, was able to continue his activities of menace and harassment of people in Canada over a more than 2-year period. And he came to Canada in 2018 and presumably as a member of China's Ministry of State Security, whose function was to engage in influence and harassment operations, I think. That suggests that something went seriously wrong and that there should be accountability for it. Moreover, it's not just Mr. Zhao. I would speculate that there are dozens of Chinese diplomats in Canada who
Oh
are
yeah, let's get rid
involved
of
in
them
their
all.
extensive network of influence and menace operations, including the police stations and harassing
There
of
we go.
Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hong Kong activists, and so on here in Canada. So,
There we go.
if China does something nasty in response to the expulsion of Mr. Zhao, I'm pretty sure that CSIS has quite a long list of other diplomats that we would be well justified to expel.
We're only scratching the surface of this
today,
threat.
in conclusion, Charles Burton,
We're barely scratching the
status
surface.
of Canada-China relations, has it changed as a result of these last 24 hours? Worsened? Improved by what has happened?
Of course it's
What would
fucking
you say
worsened, lady.
The lay of the land is as we speak.
Christ.
I think that, the general trend is towards greater awareness of Canada's policy towards China not serving Canadian security and sovereignty interests.
It does not serve our security or sovereignty interests by having this hostile relationship with this burgeoning global power. It's not serving our interests or protecting us or helping us in any way, shackling ourselves to the dying U.S. empire. That's the last thing that is happening. That's the last thing that's actually helping anybody in this country. The nastiness and harassment will not stand, man.
We simply cannot sacrifice our security and sovereignty thinking that we can get expanded access to the Chinese market for Canadian business. And I think that we will see a Canadian policy, including the Indo-Pacific strategy and laws to constrain China's malign activities in Canada coming forward that will bring us better into compliance with our allies and will improve our alliance with the United States, Australia, and Britain. And, that's got to be a good thing, but it's not going to be easy. And, as you say, there are a lot of anger in Parliament and a lot of parliamentary committees that are really coming down heavy on the Liberal.
I'm sorry, I came to a straight face when he says menace operations to refer to nothing more than normal and common diplomacy. I'm still waiting for someone to just say, what exactly has been going on. Oh, they've been harassing his family. They've been harassing these Uyghur activists and Hong Kong activists. How, though? What has been happening? Really spell it out for me here. If you're trying to scare me here about this nefarious situation, this menacing and this harassment that's been going on, really spell it out for me. What has been happening? Yeah, Canadian warships must be free to navigate the Taiwan Strait. That's right. But seriously though, he's making all these accusations. Oh, it's not just this one diplomat. There's this network of Chinese diplomats that are harassing these pro Hong Kong and pro Uyghur activists. What are they doing though? What is actually happening? No one seems to want to say that. What is this harassment? Is it an actual thing or just vague bullshit? To me, it seems we need them far more than they need us for anything. What do they need us for? I'm sure they buy they've some natural resources in Canada. I know there's Chinese companies that are involved in that, but they're the global manufacturing hub. They make all their own stuff. It's not like we're making stuff in our factories that we're sending to them. Hello, pubic mouth. Hello. They won't let us do a color revolution in Hong Kong. That's right. But this is what I mean the narrative is, right? So if you're a pro-Hong Kong democracy or a pro-Uyghur or a pro-Tibetan activist, you're getting harassed. You're getting harassed and intimidated by the PRC. But of course, if you're part of the Chinese Canadian diaspora and you support the PRC, if you show up outside the consulate to support the PRC or to push back against these claims, well, then you're being controlled and manipulated and intimidated by the PRC, right? Yeah, no, I know that narrator. I know even Coastal GasLink. There's Chinese company. There's a Chinese gas company that's part of that group that has been funding that project. So I know that they are tied up in there's some Chinese companies that are involved in that in the mining and oil extraction industries. But I think in terms of like who needs who more, you know, I don't think they're relying on Canada in any way.
Government's China policy, and I think we're going to see more of that, and this will force positive change. That's my optimistic final perspective on it.
All right. Charles Burton, I thank you so much for the time and sharing.
And of course, yeah, in this 15-minute piece, do we hear from anyone, any representative of the PRC to maybe explain their perspective of it? Just in like, even if they don't agree with it, just in the name of having like a marketplace of ideas or like dialogue or basic journalism. We're throwing around all these accusations. Why not bring on a Chinese diplomat or a representative of the PRC or just fucking someone, even not even a Chinese person, just someone that's going to offer up an alternative perspective to all this? Isn't that what journalism is supposed to be? Like that kind of J school mainstream journalism? You show one side and then you show someone from the other side commenting on it. And then people that are watching can kind of come to their own conclusions about it. Zero effort to do that though. Zero effort to do that whatsoever. We're throwing around all these accusations about intimidating the Chinese Canadian diaspora.
You can count
intimidating
on me. You're gonna have good old
Chinese
Rob
Canadian
to,
MPs
talk you through all
or, you know,
this.
working with them. I would like for someone to be more specific about what these intimidation tactics are, and I would like to have someone or some representative of the PRC or someone with a different perspective perhaps explain their side of the story. You know, isn't that what basic journalism is? No, it doesn't seem like we can do real shit. And thank you, Diego, for another gifted sub. Thank you so much, Diego. And please, folks, if you can, we're talking about how shit Canadian journalism is. And listen, if you want to support I talked about having a different perspective of this, which obviously is not available in CBC or Global News or the National Post or wherever. So if you want to support having that different alternative right here on Twitch, you can do so by supporting the work that I do here by subscribing to TRRS. It's $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. You can gift subs to rocket right up to the top of Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Every little bit helps. The support, the very generous support that I get from this community allows me to continue to engage in this kind of commentary or promote this different perspective than obviously what is available in our mainstream media establishment. And the only way that I'm able to keep this show on the air and do this show every single day, which some people, for whatever reason, seem to get something out of, is through the extremely generous support of the viewers of the show. So if you can, please subscribe to TRRS. Smash the subscribe button. Gift subs. There's many other ways that you can support the work that I do here. All of it is very, very helpful and very much appreciated. And thank you very much, Anonymous Gifter, for the gifted sub. The idea that China needs Canadian oil is laughable and makes far more sense that they're just trying to have diplomatic trade relations. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm sure that doesn't hurt. Like, they would rather not cut off that source of resources, but like they could and not really harm themselves in any material way if they had to. And thank you, Soviet Sasha, for the 50 friend coin. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm stunned. Okay, so you're a little confused here, Mustache Imperial, because there's two CSIS. There's CSIS, the arm of the Canadian, that's the Canadian intelligence, and there's CSIS, which is a think tank that's funded by the U.S. government and by the arms manufacturing industry. They're just coincidentally named the same thing.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you so much, Gen X Bushy, for the gifted sub, and thank you also,
me. You're
GMO
have
Radio,
good old Rob to
for
talk you
gifting
through
us
all
up.
this.
Thank you for that. And we do have a possible hype train. We do have a possible hype train happening as well. So if you can, folks, please support TRRS. It's literally the only way that this show is able to stay on the air. So it is pretty amazing, though, that they don't make any effort whatsoever to promote a different perspective on this. I think that's pretty incredible. Just in the name of basic journalistic practice, have someone on that's going to have an alternate viewpoint of this. In our supposedly, non-state media. Non-ideological. Like the idea that CBC is both not acting in the interest of the Canadian state
old Rob to,
and is also non-ideological is just totally fucking laughable. Thank you, anonymous gifter, for gifting a sub to our friend Marcus. That should have kickstarted that hype train, but didn't seem to have done it. We can stop China's illegal investment activities by renaming all oil companies to Precious Michael's Oil. If you know a Canadian Michael right now, you want to make sure that you got to be watching them at all times. At all hours of the day. You never know when China can strike. You never know when they can strike and take one away. Another Precious Michael away.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Red Wizard, thank you very much for the gifted sub as well. We do have a bit of a hype train going, folks. And I got to take a moment to see if we can just shill a few more slubs here. As you know, I hate going through this song and dance every time. As you know, part of being a Twitch streamer is showing up day in, day out and making the little number go up. So Daddy Bezos can have Brian put another wing in his mansion and with all the different bathrooms and stuff. This guy's a weird bathroom situation, doesn't he? He doesn't let his employees go to the bathroom, and then he lives in this house with like fucking 100 bathrooms in it. It's fucking weird, isn't it? So I hope you'll indulge me for a few moments while I try and make number go up ever so slightly more. So again, if you can, folks, not only can you join the community now and support the work that I do here, but we can also get access to exciting new emotes. Exciting new emotes through this hype train. Gotta say that water bottle is very underrated. I've just been enjoying Sam lately. I have these Gatorade bottles and I just fill them with water and stick them in the fridge. And you get a nice cold bottle of water. It's nice. Just tap. It's nice cold tap water. China literally goes out of its way to trade or at least have diplomatic ties with countries that are vocally hostile to them, while the U.S. will travel halfway across the world to make sure nobody's allowed to trade or have any ties with nearly a dozen different countries that never even thought about the U.S. till they involved themselves. It is pretty fucking insane, the discrepancy between these different diplomatic practices. Microplastic flavor crystals. That's absolutely right. I heard this is a friendship triangle and not a cult. You have a video about that you could show us. Yes, I do, Gen X Bushy, and thanks for the reminder. Let me go ahead and throw that on. Please, if you can, folks, subscribe to TRRS, okay? I really do try and keep these shill segments to a minimum. I don't like doing it. I would prefer not to have to do it, but unfortunately that's just part and parcel with having a Twitch stream is encouraging people to purchase Twitch subscriptions. I'm basically a Twitch subscription salesman if you look down to like what my actual like career is. Anyway, so if you can, folks, please subscribe or gift subs. Every little bit helps. And once again, it's totally free of charge if you have an Amazon Prime account. And if you're confused or interested in the community, you want to know what it's about, here's what it's about. Here you go.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system.
Got 2 minutes
Once
left,
you are
folks.
part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the chaos zone and all the way into the elite tier. It's not a cult.
There we go. So if you are a new chatter or community member or lurker, that's what the community is about. If you can, please support TRRS by subscribing or gifting subs. It's very, very helpful. This has been a very unsuccessful pitch segment. I'm kind of floundering out here. I'm literally starting to sweat because of that, but it's okay. I barely even noticed. Let's just continue covering this story. Is there a Steely Dan equivalent to candy liquor? I don't know. There probably should be, though. I know I have a lot of Steely Dan emotes because I'm part of a Steely Dan Discord server, so I got a lot of Don Fagan emotes on there. Oh, no problem there. And again, I know if people are watching, people are already very, very generous with this community, as I pointed out many times.
You're gonna have good
and
old
I do
Rob
totally
to,
understand if folks are like not able to. I'm not trying to like guilt you or make you feel bad. This is just, I got to do it. I got to make the number go up. I don't know. That's just how that's what you got to do on here. You know, it's depressing. Ultimately, it's why I complain about our media so much, because ultimately I think I would just like to be able to do this job, you know, as an actual job, you know, which I feel like I'm pretty good at doing. I got a little community of an audience that watches this stuff. You know, perhaps some media company could just pay me an actual salary to do it. You know, that'd be kind of nice. But of course, our media is very, very hostile to this viewpoint, as we see from this segment, where they don't even like bring on anyone to offer a different perspective on this. Yeah, just type Slava Ukraini on Twitter once in a while and make your policies on China slightly ambiguous, and the money is going to start rolling in. Absolutely. And like, oh yeah, this is so surprising. Here's CTV News from 28 minutes ago. Can you believe this? I just can't believe this. Like, look at what our media is doing.
Welcome.
And then look at the headline here. New Nanos polling says most Canadians don't trust China. Well, no shit. That's not surprising at all when we have this like media establishment in this country that for the last like 3-4 years has just been relentlessly promoting this narrative about China not to be trusted, human rights abuses in Xinjiang and Hong Kong and Tibet and Taiwan and wherever else, interfering in our democracy, flying spy balloons to spy on us. Like, yeah, no shit, people don't trust Canada. There's a whole media establishment that's ensuring that that's going to be the result. And then the results, the poll numbers get held up as an example of like, you know, they're responding to like people's needs or something like that, when it's the opposite is true. And by the way, thank you Poison224 for the gifted sub a few minutes ago. Thank you, Poison. I really appreciate the gifted sub. Thank you.
To CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle.
Soviet
and
Sasha,
Nick
I'm not
Nanos.
allowed to talk about that band. There's unfortunately a ban on me talking about it because I talked about it too much. But Gaucho.
Nick, we're again in a very tense diplomatic showdown with China. We expelled a Chinese diplomat, and China has retaliated. Where do you think?
So we love this because we can pretend that we're important. We're in this tough diplomatic showdown. Like, they don't care. They do not care. We love to feel the sense of self-importance in all our journalists who are, of course, think that they're all like CSIS agents or whatever. They think they get to play like big, like, you know, the big tough guy here. Oh, we're in this diplomatic spat. Like, they don't give a shit. You know, if anything, they're just tired of being lectured to by these like junior partners in imperialism, lecturing them about what they should or shouldn't do. And they're tired of being treated like a colony that we can just boss around. If that qualifies as being a diplomatic spat or whatever, the idea that we're on the same level as China in terms of like global importance or geopolitical importance in any way is just farcical.
How do Canadians feel about our relationship with that country?
Not too great, Michael, not too great. You know, we just finished a survey and we asked Canadians about a series of countries, including China, and asked them whether they were, you know, we could have a positive or negative kind of, whether they be positive or negative partners. And, you know, check out the numbers. So not a big surprise. Look at who's at the top. You can see United Kingdom, 86% or thereabouts think that they'd be a positive or somewhat positive partner for Canada. Germany actually
Pathetic
scores
country.
quite well, 80. The United States, 78. France, 74. Go to the bottom. As in the very bottom, there's China, 11.
Wow.
Michael, 11.
11%.
11%. Yeah. So you can see almost 3 out of every 4 Canadians.
Yeah, I wonder
use the
why.
words
I wonder why that
negative or
is.
somewhat negative to describe China.
Like, again, I've talked about this like in nonstop full court press propaganda campaign about this. But the idea that like I was saying with CBC, they don't even have this alternative viewpoint. The idea of Canada working with forming deeper diplomatic bonds with China, working with them, like maybe signing further deals and cooperation agreements with them. This idea is never presented. It's never discussed. This option is not presented to people in our media. This has been a completely relentless, one-sided narrative going on for years now. And then they look around going, well, Canadians just don't trust China. Unbelievable. Can you imagine? And it's like, yeah, I can't imagine. Like that's what this propaganda campaign has been about, has been convincing people of exactly that. Why do we want to be friends with Turf Island? Because we're a sad surf mentality country. That's why.
China as a potential partner with Canada. So it speaks to how strained the relationship is between Canada and China. And you know what, Michael, this is more than an issue for diplomats now. Like walk down the street, 3 out of every 4 Canadians when they hear about China just have negative connotations right now. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Nick, in terms of allegations of foreign interference in our elections, it just seems like every day there's a new allegation, a new headline.
The coming from our intelligence agencies.
David Johnston to look into this, and I suppose in about a month's time he's going to decide whether or not there should be a public inquiry. What do you see as the next step, the next phase in this?
Well, I think the government has already told us what the next step was, because they've expelled the Chinese diplomat. The Chinese have expelled the Canadian diplomat, like the tit for tat. But how can we not have an inquiry after that? Because basically the federal government has said, yes, there is some sort or foreign interference does exist. And they have this example with the Chinese diplomat. So I'm not sure how David Johnston can come out with anything other than a recommendation for an inquiry. But you know what, this thing cuts both ways, because you know this isn't just about diplomacy. It's going to touch other areas, and it's not just about the Liberals. Although for the Liberals, one of the problems that they do have on this particular file has to do with the funds received by the Trudeau Foundation that is separate from Justin Trudeau. And obviously he was not directly involved in anything because that is a separate organization that is separately funded. But it's just not good in terms of the associations that people will make between the Trudeau Foundation and Justin Trudeau, and the optics. Just the optics are not good for that.
China exerts, a huge amount of influence in Canada, as do many other countries. Is it fair, I suppose, to single them out when American lobbyists are very much?
I'm surprised to even hear that question being asked.
As are many other countries.
Well, I think it's fair to talk about foreign interference, and other countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States do have requirements for people to disclose when they're kind of advocating or working on behalf of any kind of foreign country. So
Yeah, but a diplomat
I
does
think now it's a
disclose that.
no-brainer. Some of our major allies are doing it. Canada needs to do that too. Whether we need to single out China over other countries is a completely different matter. But the thing is that the China-Canada file and what I'll say, the China-US file, the China-UK file, the China-Germany file is hot. And there's a lot of sensitivities right now to China and its
It's also a good question why this polling guy is
countries like the United
answering
States,
these kinds of
United
questions.
Kingdom, Germany, Japan, all engage in activities that advance their interests. Many of them transparently through diplomats.
We're expelling a diplomat.
Support educational exchange with Canadian universities. They fund research at Canadian universities transparently. They hire lobbyists transparently to help them with stuff. So, I think the issue with China, at least, is that their approach to influence just might be a little different than what we see for a lot of other countries. And I think that's why there's such a focus on China. But the reality is the United States...
They're engaging in these things much more nefariously.
Whether you want to call it foreign interference, they're into foreign influence because... And you know what? Canada around the world does the same thing. We go to other countries. We have arrangements with other academic institutions. There are Canadian enterprises that fund research in other countries. We have diplomats kind of working on our behalf. So, the thing is that it's the way the world works. But I think for China, they're at the top of the list right now, just because of some of the things that could be perceived of as being unsavory in terms of how they're trying to advance.
Oh, it's unsavory. Okay, I see. They're doing it in this unsavory way. I see. Okay. Fucking astounding.
Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。China and Canada are in the midst of a diplomatic tit for tat, with Canada expelling a Chinese diplomat based there and China following in kind. But what exactly is going on? Is Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just getting his revenge for being embarrassed by President Xi Jinping at the
China's
G20
doing it wrong. They should try doing
year?
it while being white.
Today, I'll explain in simple terms what is up. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. This week, Canada took the extraordinary step of basically kicking a Chinese diplomat based there out of the country. China followed in kind, asking a Canadian diplomat to leave China within 5 days. But what exactly is going on? Well, today I will explain and we'll answer the burning question of whether or not this is just Canadian PM Justin Trudeau's chance to get revenge on China for that super embarrassing dressing down he received from Chinese President Xi Jinping last year at the G20 summit in Bali. In case you have forgotten already, and I doubt you have, let's take a quick refresher on exactly what happened in Bali. So basically, China had already refused a request to meet with the Canadian PM. So Justin found an opportunity to pounce on President Xi with Canadian media in tow. That backfired dramatically, with President Xi politely cutting him off and telling him to act like...
Well, yeah, it's the room full of CPC officials sitting around a big table getting angry. They can't figure out how to subdue the mighty Trudeau. Not even that. It's like Trudeau is scary enough, but we can't have this terrifying Pierre Poilievre. Oh, no. Imagine if the Canadian Conservative Party took power. All our plans would be exposed. They'd be so tough. They would for sure be able to counter our nefarious plot throughout the world. It's like they're really sitting around talking about this stuff. Oh yeah, we're so intimidated by the Conservative Party of Canada. Please. We're fucking shaken. We're dealing with the biggest world imperialist power right now. As we're surpassing them economically. No, we're staying awake at night because of the Canadian Conservative Party. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So scary and intimidating.
Like a real leader and not go behind the scenes snitching to media. And Trudeau was left stung, to say the least, walking away in embarrassment with his tail between his legs. Let's take a look.
everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper, that's not appropriate.
而且我们也不是那样进行的。
And that's not how the way the conversation was
如
conducted.
果有诚心，咱们就用一个互相尊重的态度来进行很好的沟通。
If there is
否则这个结果就不好说了。
If
In
there is
Canada, we
sincerity
believe
on
in
your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have.
It's one thing I haven't noticed about this clip is that he tried to walk away. He tried to just be like, okay, get the fuck out of here, Trudeau. And then he tried to walk away and Trudeau keeps him. Look, he's on his way out. He's turning around. He's like, oh, this motherfucker.
Frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to continue.
创造条件，创造条件。
let's create the conditions first.
好。好。
I still love watching that video even to this day. So does it have any bearing on the current situation? Well, first, let's take a look at what is going on. Basically, it all started with this expose in Canada's Globe and Mail on May 1, with the publication claiming to have seen a sensitive and private report by the Canadian Secret Intelligence Service, the CSIS, which claimed the Chinese government is interfering in Canada's domestic affairs. The Globe and Mail report said, China sees Canada as a high priority target and employs incentives and punishment as part of a vast influence network directed at legislators, business executives, and diaspora communities
it's totally
in
like
this
a meeting
country,
with a child.
according to a top secret intelligence assessment from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. The CSIS report
This is what a lot of this comes down to, though, right? Is that we still think that we can like lecture China like they're going to be some kind of compliant colony, you know? And that's the reality, is that they feel now totally comfortable just like completely rejecting that. They're not going to allow themselves to be condescended to by fucking Canada of all places. They're not going to be pushed around anymore by the United States. You know, this has been a big part of this like pivot to China and what all this propaganda has been about over the last couple of years, is just them standing up and refusing to be like treated like this backwater colony of Western imperialism. They're not going to tolerate that anymore. That's what a lot of this is about.
Overview of Chinese government foreign interference in Canada, ranging from investigating a Conservative MP's relatives in China to harassing a mainland Chinese student in Canada who publicly supported Hong Kong's democracy movement. Now, it's exactly because of this news report about 10 days ago that pressure began to grow in government circles in Canada to take action against one of China's diplomats named Zhao Wei, who they claimed was targeting Conservative MP Michael Chong. The CSIS report they refer to, which is reportedly titled People's Republic of China Foreign Interference in Canada, a Critical National Security Threat, has not been seen by the public, and was actually first released way back on July 20, 2021. Let's take a look at some of the pandemonium in Canada's House of Commons earlier this week, as opposition MPs called for the government and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to take action.
The Prime Minister is so courageous, he might throw out Beijing's agent. A week after we found out, as a nation, that this agent had been threatening the family of a Canadian MP for a vote that he cast in this House. The Prime Minister hasn't thrown him out. In fact, he extends credentials
no
to that
specifics
agent,
still on
allowing
this.
him to operate with impunity from our laws here in our country. Will the Prime Minister show some courage, answer the question, and kick this agent out today?
This is about a member of this House serving his country and the safety of his family in the balance. It's appalling that the Liberals are tarnishing this MP, but it's even worse that the diplomat who perpetuated it is still here with the rights that even Canadians don't have because it was given to him by that government. If there are no consequences, it'll just happen again. The diplomat needs to go back to Beijing, and it needs to happen now. Will they do it today?
So
How many more
what
Michaels
are the
will it take?
claims
We're just going to have to
exactly?
throw a bunch of Michaels
Let's
at
go
these
back
guys
to
till they
the
cut it
Globe
out,
and
till they
Mail.
knock it off.
A national security source whom the Globe is not naming because they risk prosecution under Security of Information Act said the MP targeted was Conservative MP Michael Chong, and that Zhao Wei, a Chinese diplomat in Canada, was working on this matter. They claim the CSIS report accuses China of engaging in clandestine and deception operations. Its goal is to insert itself into diaspora communities and then mobilize them as political influencers and apply pressure in support of Beijing's interests. The CCP uses incentives and punishment to achieve its united frontwork objectives, instilling fear that criticizing the PRC will negatively impact bilateral relations and jeopardize access to the PRC market, CSIS said in the report. It is worth noting that the Globe and Mail report offers no actual evidence at all, just accusations. Of course, I have no idea whatsoever if the Security Service paper, which is reportedly 9 pages long, offers any evidence either, since it has not been made public. Now, China denies the allegations entirely, with China's Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson saying yesterday,
I mean,
China
Obama,
never
as we've talked
interferes
about
in other...
before, I think it was really disturbing a couple of weeks ago seeing that liberal MP, Han Dong, like fucking crying and being like, I'm loyal to Canada, and like had the way these accusations of like being this like having this dual loyalty or whatever were affecting him. And that was the disturbing thing watching it, because like you talk about internment camps for Chinese people, like that's where this goes, you know? That's where this goes when we're suggesting that, like, and that's what I was talking about, where you talk about our Chinese Canadian diaspora. This is what I mean. It's like we're creating a situation where if you have this like Chinese ethnic background, you cannot say one positive thing about the PRC. You can't push back on any of these claims, these fucking wild claims sourced by these reactionary or weapons manufacturer funded think tanks. You can't push back on any of these claims about human rights. You can't suggest that China is doing good things in the world. You can't, support the PRC in any way, because if you do now, we're creating this climate where you're going to be accused of having these dual loyalties, which of course would be unthinkable if we were going to talk about like Jewish Canadians who are supporting Israel. No one, obviously it's an anti-Semitic trope. No one would say like, oh, you've got dual allegiance. No one would say that. But it's becoming completely normalized now for if you're a Chinese Canadian MP, or if you're just a member of the diaspora, you must take the most reactionary stances on China. You must co-sign all these accusations about human rights. You must support all these like officially recognized dissident groups and dissident ethnic groups and protest movements, even when they're funded by the NED or they're funded by the arms manufacturing industry. Like, if you're a Chinese Canadian, if you don't take these reactionary stances, you're going to be now accused of having this kind of dual loyalty. And if this eventually does explode into actual conflict, I hope to fucking God it doesn't. Sometimes I've talked about how it feels inevitable, this kind of World War III situation, if the Taiwan situation explodes to the same extent. If, just like we did in Ukraine, we keep pushing up against those red lines, which they've clearly said for years, this is our red line. If we keep pushing up against those red lines and it does lead to like a major military conflict, that's what it is going to be. Like that's where that's going. That's where it's going. And we're going to start accusing members of the diaspora of having these dual allegiances. And like, that's where this goes. Like, it's really alarming. And I wish more people would kind of like start to be aware of how dangerous of a situation that is. Literally used to have laws in 1800s, early 1900s around Asians in general not owning property. It's the same strategy. Well, and the same thing like with Canada's housing crisis. Like, what are we doing about the housing crisis? We're not doing anything to decommodify housing or doing anything that's going to hurt the people, like real estate investors' stock portfolios. But what we're doing is like being like, it's these Chinese nationals. You see, that's why housing is so expensive. We're going to go after these Chinese nationals buying real estate, while not actually fixing any of the problems that lead to the housing crisis in the first place. And it's not even the Chinese diaspora, right? It's like the more this continues, the more this like dual loyalty accusations continues, it's going to be anyone, like anyone that even remotely looks Chinese, anyone who looks remotely Asian is going to get lumped into this. It's going to lead to hate crimes. It's going to lead to like people like, distrusting their people in their community, in their neighborhood. And yeah, the ultimately dark version of this is it's going to lead to like internment camps and violence, like state violence against Chinese members of the Chinese diaspora. You know, it's really fucking dangerous, and I wish more people would take it seriously. And I wish more people as well would take a look at this media narrative that's being promoted and the way that this is completely one-sided, the way there's never any alternative perspective that's promoted, the way it's having this impact on people's opinions about China, which we've seen like just drop steadily since this propaganda campaign started. You know, I wish people would start to pay attention to what's going on here, because it's a really dangerous situation. And as I keep saying, this is the opposite of what we need to be doing when it comes to China. We need to be forming deeper diplomatic bonds, not increasing these tensions. We need to be forming deeper ties, deeper cultural ties. As I've said before, Canada should join the Belt and Road Initiative. We need infrastructure. We need rail. We can't build shit. We don't have the ability, the political will, or the ability to build fucking anything. We should be working with China in order to help develop our own country, rather than creating this hostile situation where we're throwing out diplomats and we're at each other's throats. You know, we're going in the opposite direction of where we should go. But again, what I just said just now, this opinion is not presented at all in our media establishment, you know, in the opinion pages, no matter what paper it is, on CBC, on Global News, nowhere. You do not hear this opinion stated at all. Anything resembling this. It's how hostile do we need to be towards China, a lot or a little. That's basically the way that the ideological spectrum functions on this. Do we need to be just a little bit hostile or really, really hostile? That's the kind of alternatives that are presented in our media establishment.
The country's internal affairs. The interference claims about China are unfounded. They are ideology and politically driven manipulation designed to slander and denigrate China. Canada's ill-founded decision to declare our diplomat persona non grata is an egregious move that violates the basic norms governing international relations and a deliberate blow to Canada's relations with China. He goes on to completely deny the contents of that secret CSIS report and its allegations. For quite some time, Canadian media and senior politicians have cited so-called CSIS classified documents to smear the Chinese.
Yeah, I mean, Leaping Larry, this is something that comes up a lot on the show, but we talk about this often. But it's the height of like Western chauvinism. If like, to say nothing of these reactionaries, but if you're one of these like Western leftists who have not organized anything, we've never had a successful revolution. We've been going in the wrong direction for now decades, and we've accomplished nothing. The idea that Western leftists feel comfortable critiquing China or Cuba or North Korea, DPRK, or Venezuela or any other country that's in their own way trying to like walk this socialist path is just the height of colonial arrogance, you know, and Western chauvinism. Absolutely absurd to me to think that any like Western leftist would have anything important to say or any like nuanced criticism of a country that's actually out there trying to build socialism against all odds and has been remarkably successful over the last several decades with this amazing historic development. You know? Yeah, I'm a leftist. No, I don't support any successful socialist revolutions. Exactly. Yeah, that's the attitude. It's just, it's so silly. We condemned both sides. That's right. All states are bad. That's right. There we go. And I'm just going to continue living in the West and benefiting from Western imperialism while condemning that, but also not supporting any alternative to that.
Diplomatic and consular missions in Canada. None of the accusations are based on facts. They are trumped up with hidden agenda. So as he mentioned there, Canada decided to name Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei persona non grata, which is basically a diplomatic term that means, in plain English, a person who is not welcome. Let's quickly take a look at what Trudeau had to say.
We will take whatever action is necessary to continue to protect our democracy and show that we're standing up for our values and our principles. This is a decision we took seriously, we took with careful consideration in order to do the right thing and expel the Chinese diplomat. We understand there is retaliation, but we will not be intimidated, and we will continue to do everything necessary to keep our Canadians, protected from foreign interference.
As you are probably aware, diplomats working in foreign countries enjoy certain privileges in their roles, including diplomatic immunity, which means that they are exempt from the laws of their host country.
And sorry, you said this a few moments ago, vote for Hefe. I missed that one. Half of America wants to murder the other half. I don't know if even the State Department can manufacture consent for such a war like they could 50 years ago. Won't stop them from trying, and lots of people falling for it though as well. And I agree with that. I don't think it is going to be as easy as maybe it once was. And as we've seen before, even if you get people on board with this propaganda campaign to support such a conflict, once that the economic consequences of that actually reach people because of these deep economic ties that we have with China and their manufacturing industry. And once our supply of treats dries up, you're going to see support for this conflict dry up a lot quicker as well, which is part of the genius of, Dengism. And the whole point of opening up their economy in the first place is that it's made this kind of conflict way more difficult for us to instigate as it maybe would if we didn't have these deep economic ties together. Because if this conflict does go ahead, it's going to mean major changes to to manufacturing, to trade, and is going to really affect people's ability to purchase or get access to products that we just assume are just part of our lives. Yeah, Canada will be a treat-free testing ground for the U.S. Yeah, for sure. Can we agree that no government is perfect? Isn't one of the core tenets of dialectical materialist analysis critical support? Maybe I don't understand yet. Well, no one's saying that any government is perfect. I wouldn't say that the PRC is perfect, or ideal, but it doesn't. No one ever said anything about ideal, but it doesn't have to be ideal. But the point is, our criticisms are really not useful, I think, at a time when you have this nonstop propaganda campaign trying to demonize this country and this nation and trying to get people on board with this narrative. I don't think that's the time for our principled critiques. I don't think it really adds anything. It doesn't accomplish anything. It only contributes to that narrative, which is a really harmful thing. So it doesn't mean we need to think that everything's perfect or that no mistakes ever happen or that everything's ideal or there's some perfect utopia. No, I don't think anyone believes that. But I don't think these principled critiques from the random Western leftists are really contributing anything positive in these moments when this incredibly hostile environment is being promoted and created.
In any country, and we'll use Canada for this example, labels a diplomat persona non grata, they are announcing that they are no longer welcome and that they will no longer have the same rights, for example, to diplomatic immunity. Countries can label diplomats persona non grata for any reason and without explanation. So that is exactly what China did in retaliation, labeling Jennifer Lynn Lalonde, consul of the Consulate General of Canada in Shanghai, persona non grata, and giving her until May 13 to leave the country. Now, many have accused China of being childish and playing games with this retaliation, but this is in fact quite a standard and definitely an expected response. So who is the Member of Parliament that Canada accuses Chinese diplomats of targeting? He is Conservative MP Michael Chong, who is sternly anti-China. When the Globe and Mail approached him about being named in the secret CSIS report, he said he was unaware of his inclusion. Mr. Chong, reached by the Globe, said he had no knowledge of this. He said he has relatives in Hong Kong. He was hit with sanctions by China in March 2021 after sponsoring the parliamentary motion on genocide and has been careful not to contact his relatives since. This is more evidence of the PRC's meddling in Canadian democracy and more evidence for Ottawa to take immediate action, Mr.
That's a question too, is how does Canada supporting a separatist violent protest movement or formally accusing the Chinese government of committing genocide when they're trying to engage in they're trying to combat separatism and extremism, something that we did in the West with extreme violence. with America, invading Iraq and Afghanistan, Canada invading Afghanistan. We've been fully supporting America while they engage in this completely barbaric war on terror for 20 years with CIA black site torture prisons in Guantanamo and all the absolute horror and atrocity that's been involved with. And meanwhile, China tries to engage in their anti-extremism, anti-separatism policy, and we've got the Canadian officials and MPs coming together to accuse them of doing genocide, formally accuse them in our parliament, a country that's founded on genocide, Canada, formally accusing them. But that's not interfering? That's not meddling in China's affairs? Like, that's literally Canadian MPs supporting like separatist movements, supporting like official dissident groups, promoting the idea that there needs to be this kind of like Balkanization process of China and Tibet and Xinjiang and Hong Kong and all these places. That's not meddling, it always comes down to that. It's like what we do. Well, that's just diplomacy. That's not meddling. That's not meddling. That's not aggressive. That's not hostile. When we're talking about joining this like military alliance, AUKUS, in the South China Sea, and we got to get some Canadian submarines patrolling there as well. It's patrolling the Taiwan Strait, but that's not aggressive. We're doing all that defensively. We're all doing that in this like normal diplomatic way. But when they engage in any behavior whatsoever that promotes their interests, or when they push back on any of these claims, that's like aggressive and hostile and interfering and all that stuff. Yeah, and we allowed Canadian companies to profit from the Iraq War. That's why I say we're kind of junior partners in Western imperialism. Sometimes we might take these stances that show that we're kind of the good cop in Western imperialism, even though we don't do anything to stop the U.S. from engaging in these disastrous policies, and often Canadian companies are profiting from them anyways.
The Chong said. Again, no evidence is put forward and no concrete allegations that he was targeted in any way are explained. Once the Conservative Party knew that Mr. Chong was included in the CSIS report, they put pressure on the Trudeau government to take action, and that chaos spiraled into that Chinese diplomat being asked to leave. Now Canada's opposition MPs are accusing Trudeau's government of doing nothing since the secret CSIS report was released in 2021, especially because they never notified MPs mentioned as alleged targets in the report. Trudeau then quickly called Mr. Chong for a briefing, but the opposition says that's too little, too late. And that basically answers the question, is Canada kicking a Chinese diplomat out of the country revenge from Trudeau being snubbed by President Xi at last year's G20 summit? You might have guessed already that the answer is a decisive no.
It seems more to be coming from CSIS. It has nothing to do with Trudeau. In fact, and I think he's correct in that, is that that's not what it has anything to do with. What is happening here is that our intelligence agency, I'm sure at the behest of the U.S. State Department, is promoting this narrative that Trudeau is somehow too compliant or too soft on China, and promoting the idea that the Conservative Party are going to get tough with them. That's the narrative that's being promoted here. With Han Dong, with Michael Chong, with Trudeau, with the Trudeau Foundation, all this stuff. That's the narrative that's being promoted through our intelligence agency, which again is most likely working at the behest of the U.S. State Department. At the end of the day, isn't sovereignty a fundamental principle of democracy? How can we claim to be champions of democracy if we continually interfere in other countries' policies and elections like Guaido? We're a joke. Well, and that's the thing, and that's the way we get around that, all Dutch, right, is by saying, well, that's not a democracy. Maduro is not legitimate. So it's really serving the interests of democracy and serving the Venezuelan people who cry out for freedom when we proclaim some fucking random guy to be president of the country. That's how we justify that. Oh, so China, of course, China doesn't have any democracy. And that's why we must stand for the residents of Xinjiang and Tibet and Hong Kong in their struggle for freedom and Western-style liberal democracy, right? That's how we justify that. But it's like everyone sees through that around the world.
Serious pressure on Trudeau and his government. And until this week, they had not acted on the CSIS report claiming Canada was being targeted by Chinese operations to interfere. Now, why is
Cool
that?
J, new Feinstein
Well,
picture.
as I
She looks
mentioned
good.
before, the contents of that secret report
Looks
have
very
not
healthy.
been made public. And they weren't even given to opposition members of parliament who were mentioned as alleged targets. Why? Well, it is very possible that Trudeau himself knows the claims are spurious and that the evidence is dodgy and that further action was not necessary. And don't forget, China does have a very serious non-interference policy whereby it pledges not to interfere in the governance of foreign countries because it knows firsthand just how devastating that can be following the 100 years of humiliation where China was basically plundered and smashed into poverty during the Opium Wars by the British, who were intent on selling illicit drugs here. Well, that is basically it for today, you guys. As usual, I'd love to know what you have to say. Do you think the CSIS report has any real evidence of Chinese interference? Do you think China should retaliate further? Let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And
that was the Andy Morham's clip on this.
以所谓干涉加内政的谎言为由，公然宣布一名中国外交官为不受欢迎的人。中方对此表示强烈谴责。
Yeah, and like on the principle, like, and this is it, like, on the pretext of interfering in Canada's internal affairs, like, the stated goals of the Chinese foreign ministry are not to interfere in anyone's affairs. That's literally their whole thing. That's the way they engage in diplomacy throughout the world. Like Western leftists, that's one of the criticisms of China. Why don't they support the Palestinians? You know, why are they doing business with Israel? Why are they doing business with Saudi Arabia? Why are they doing a business with all these reactionary regimes? It's because they have this policy of non-interference. That's their basic thing. We're not going to interfere with you, and you don't interfere with us. That's the basic way we're going to engage in diplomacy. So just that whole thing that they're so concerned with Canada and they're so intimidated by Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party that they just simply have to interfere in Canada's internal affairs to ensure that they're not kept in check by these scary Conservative Party members. It's just on its face, it's just farcical. Like, it just doesn't make sense at all. It's completely against the way they engage, the stated goals and the way they engage in diplomacy throughout the world. You know, it's just complete nonsense. Plus, they have a multinational country and allow each nation to help shape foreign policy. Yeah, that's very true. Which, of course, we never want to hear about whenever we talk about like Xinjiang or Tibet or whatever. We never want to hear about the actual ethnic groups that live there in that region that have benefited from being part of the PRC. Like, you look at like Urumqi is becoming this like almost a capital. It's becoming this huge center for economic development. Of course, we don't want to hear from like the representatives who are deeply implicated in the governance of that part of the nation, right? We only want to hear from these like official dissidents who live like expatriates who, you know, are associated with these think tanks funded by the government and funded by the weapons contractors. They're the ones we want to hear from. We don't want to hear from the actual people that live in part of these ethnic groups that live in these places. And yeah, as you say, they have this ability to shape their foreign policy. And can you look at First Nations or Indigenous people shaping Canadian foreign policy? No, you can't, because that's a completely preposterous idea.
官为不受欢迎的人，中方对此表示强烈谴责和坚决反对。中方已向加方提出严正交涉和强烈抗议。中方从不干涉别国内政，所谓中国干涉加拿大内政，完全是无稽之谈，是对中方的污蔑抹黑。
And this is all true. There's no facts involved whatsoever. This is all anonymous summaries of a top secret report with no evidence and no actual information about these things that have been going on. It's all just hearsay and accusations coming from our intelligence agency. Yeah, just like Ukrainians from the Donbass don't count. Exactly. We got to listen to the Ukrainians, listen to the Uyghurs, listen to the Tibetans, listen to the Venezuelans. They're crying for freedom. Listen to the Cubans. But which ones, though? Which ones do we want to hear from? Well, it seems like we only want to hear from certain specific people that have certain specific viewpoints that just so happen to coincide with the narratives that are being promoted by our state and by our intelligence agencies, and who are pro-Western. We want to hear from them, but we don't want to hear from anyone else.
加方以莫须有的罪名宣布中国外交人员为不受欢迎的人，违反国际关系基本准则，蓄意破坏中加关系，性质十分恶劣。一段时间以来，假媒体和有关政要援引所谓加安全情报局机密文件，编造虚假信息，抹黑中国驻加使领
I like the contempt that's coming across even in the subtitles.
纯属别有用心的捏造。针对加方无理行径，中方决定采取对等反制措施，宣布加拿大驻上海总领馆领事甄议会为不受欢迎的人，要求其5月13日前离华。这是中方维护自身合法权益之举。
The last time China meddled, 1979, every other country does way more. Yeah, that's right. And like talk about a principled critique. I think I've talked about how I think the opening up of the economy and a lot of these things were incredibly positive developments and led China on the path it's on today. It doesn't mean mistakes haven't happened. And obviously they made some disastrous foreign policy decisions during that time. But again, we're at a time where these kind of principled critiques aren't really contributing all that much. And this was now decades ago.
正当和必要。我要强调，中国驻加使领馆及外交领事人员始终遵守有关国际公约和加当地法律法规，依法履职。加政府基于谎言，采取严重损害中国外交领事人员合法权益的错误举动，中方绝不接受。中方维护自身利益的决心坚定不移。我们奉劝加方立即停止无理挑衅。如加方不听劝告，肆意妄为，中方必将坚决有力回击。由此产生的一切后果，必须由加方承担。
And I want to dig into this, like while we're still focusing on this, while I still got some time here. This whole thing about the police stations, these Chinese police stations, that's part of this. And that's part of this intimidation, apparently. Allegedly used to intimidate the Chinese population in Canada. So let's look at what these reactionaries are, the kind of accusations they're making, and then look into the details of what these places actually are.
2 years for the government to do the right thing and expel a diplomat who was directly involved in interfering in our democracy and intimidating the family of a member of this House of Commons for their vote in this House of Commons.
Like the way that this is just accepted as being the reality. Oh, they intimidated this guy's family. Still no details, still no actual like facts involved in any of this. Purely secondhand accusations being made from our intelligence community.
In Beijing continues to operate illegal police stations in Canada used to intimidate members of the Chinese diaspora community. So is the Prime Minister and his Public Safety Minister going to wait 2 years, or will they commit today to shut down these foreign influence operations running out of these Beijing-backed police stations?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as long as we get the same questions, they'll get the same answers. The RCMP has taken decisive action with regards to the foreign interference that is in relationship to these so-called police stations, and going forward, they will take the necessary steps to protect our communities. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives talk about apathy. They were apathetic for a decade when they held the reins of government, when they could have put in place the tools, the measures, and the resources that they're now asking the government to do. We're doing that work, Mr. Speaker. They need to stop with the politicization accusation. They need to stop with the claims of political interference and get behind the work that this government is doing.
Well, member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
What we'd like is for the government to actually start doing the work. And yesterday, all members on that side, including the public safety minister and the prime minister, voted against a public inquiry. They voted against expelling a diplomat. They voted against a foreign agent registry. All of these tools can be
This
used
is where our discourse
to
is
protect
at.
members of the Chinese diaspora community from intimidation from the communist dictatorship in Beijing. They're operating here on our soil, and this government has the ability to stop them. So we have a very simple question, and the minister says if we ask the same question, we'll get the same answer. We'd like some action to go with it. Will they implement a foreign agent registry and shut down these Beijing-backed police stations?
These Beijing-backed police stations. Like, this is where our fucking discourse is at on this. And here's the example, because this narrative has been going on for a while in New York City as well. This idea of like these overseas secret Chinese police stations. This is not just going on in Canada. This is happening in America as well. The communists are here, and you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing. Yeah, I wish I could see Chinese cops instead of the RCMP as well. The overseas Chinese police station in NYC, the media has been scaremongering about. It's a community service. This is a friend of the show, Radio Free Amanda, aka Cat Content Only. It's a community service center that helps Chinese immigrants with renewing driver's license and filling out other necessary forms. So this is the one in NYC, and this is the same kind of thing that's been going on in Canada. After FBI arrests, Chinatown leaders deny secret police station allegations. The FBI has arrested 2 Chinese agents allegedly tied to a secret police station in NYC. Again, we talked about the NYPD, which has police stations all throughout the world. For what reason? Well, why is the NYPD operating in other countries? Well, we don't know, but that's okay though. And it's the same kind of accusation. The FBI arrested 2 Chinese agents allegedly tied to a secret police station in NYC the Chinese government used to keep tabs on dissidents. Like, that's what the accusation is. The current president of the America Changal Association, Jimmy Liu, who is also Harry Liu's brother, refuted claims that the association was running a covert police station, clarified that it was a police overseas service station, which was different from an actual police station. According to him, no police officers from China had visited their office, and the association was focused on helping Chinese citizens renew and complete forms. Jimmy Liu explained that during the pandemic, many Chinese immigrants were unable to travel back to China due to restrictions. To aid them, the association collaborated with the local police station in Fuzhou to remotely assist immigrants in renewing their Chinese driver's licenses as well as other necessary documents. This is the scary Chinese police station. Keeping track of dissidents. This is what they're up to. One Chinatown resident who immigrated to New York from Changal. It brought conveniences to our lives. Just terrible that a community service center is being attacked like this for political purposes. S.C. Zhang, who moved to New York from Changal in 2001 and preferred to use initials for his first name, said he benefited from the association's activity as an immigrant. For example, I got mooncakes from its Mid-Autumn Festival event. Oh my God, that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. My goodness. I got mooncakes from its Mid-Autumn Festival event. Zhang said that he appreciated the association promotes Chinese culture in the U.S. and brings the Chinese diasporas together. It brought conveniences to our lives, Zhang said in Chinese. Zhang said he believed the case is politically motivated. I felt there were fewer cases like this when China and the U.S. were in a better relationship before. Now it seems there are more things like this when the relationship gets intense. Yeah, and it's literally just making life more difficult we're talking about protecting the Chinese diaspora from being harassed and monitored, when really it's like quite the opposite. Not only are we subjecting them to like these kinds of dual loyalty accusations, but we're closing these kind of cultural centers which are, working to try and help them try and improve their lives in some ways. They're using delicious mooncakes to brainwash us. Yeah, it's happening in Quebec as well. The RCMP investigated the only 2 Chinese community centers here. A lot of scaremongering for places that offered immigrants French classes, helped lonely seniors, and women suffering from domestic violence. And it's like, yeah, in Quebec, we need immigrants to speak French. It's so vital and important. And then when you've got Chinese cultural centers that are helping Chinese immigrants assimilate into the culture and learn the language, and then we accuse them of engaging in this like nefarious plot. I'm not going to read this article out to you in French, but yeah. And it referred again in la presse, les postes de police chinois sur le sol canadien ont été fermés. So yeah, we've got to make sure we close all these cultural centers, which are literally trying to help the Chinese diaspora assimilate into our culture more, which is what we're supposed to want. The immigrants need to speak the language. And again, I would love to see someone articulating this viewpoint in our media if we're going to talk about this. I would like to hear from someone maybe that is going to explain what these cultural centers are, even if they're just held up just for the basic journalistic practices of showing this other perspective. But all we get are the accusations from CSIS, and then it gets backed up by our media establishment. This is from 2 months ago.
The RCMP is investigating 2 Montreal area organizations as alleged Chinese police stations. According to a human rights group, the group is called Safeguard Defenders. It's recently been raising the alarm that China is running its own police stations of a sort in other countries, including in our own. These stations are used to monitor and potentially threaten Chinese people who are living abroad.
They need to learn French, but the places that intend to learn them learn French are bad. That's right.
China. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin is in Montreal, standing by with the latest here. Jen, give us the details on what we know about these stations.
Yeah, there's very little that is known. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding all this. What we do know is they believe that there are 2 centers that work with the Chinese community here in Montreal and on the South Shore in Brossard, that are actually being used for these police stations that we've been hearing about since the Safeguard Defenders that Spanish NGO you were just referring to brought to light the fact that there were about 100 police stations around the globe that were operating and that were backed by
every
the Chinese
German
government.
heritage center across the Midwest must be secret Gestapo centers.
That the RCMP is looking into the situation.
Seriously.
That they believe that there could have.
Let's look into these like Ukrainian culture centers and whether they're intimidating Ukrainian diaspora into like promoting the funding of like Azov battalion and all these things. Why don't we take a look into that? For sure. Let's definitely take a look into all these different ethnic or cultural centers and really dig into what they're doing in the same way.
Have been some intimidation, some harassment
of like those
Chinese,
Ukrainian restaurants with Bandera on the wall.
People of Chinese origin living here in the Montreal area, and that they say this will not be tolerated. They've actually asked people who may have been victims of this situation to come forward. They've put out a phone number. They're hoping that anyone who is concerned will actually call in here.
All right. Our Quebec Bureau Chief Genevieve Beauchemin in Montreal. Thanks, Jen.
Richmond as well. When's this from? From 4 months ago. It's all across the country.
It's discreet, but the message
is clear. You
is
can't have Chinese cultural centers anymore. It's
Mounties
dangerous.
are watching. An all-black cruiser parked directly outside the Canada-Windsor Friendship Society. Neighbors say police showed up Saturday with questions.
Have we seen any suspicious activity? Do we know what's happening there? How often the activity was? How many cars?
The couple did not want to give CBC their names out of fear of reprisal. They and other neighbors say the society was bustling with people but didn't seem suspicious from the outside. Last week...
Yeah, lo and behold, they started finding it a lot more suspicious once this nonstop propaganda campaign started happening in our media, convincing them that China is this dangerous threat to our democracy. Lo and behold, once that started happening, they started finding this a lot more intimidating and scary. I wonder if there's any relation to these two things, to this narrative in our media and people's opinions about this.
Human rights group Safeguard Defenders flagged the presence of Chinese foreign police stations, identifying one
with the
in
Falun
the
Gong
Vancouver area.
rags just arriving on the doorstep every day.
Yes,
totally
it's
fine.
a network of individuals rather than thinking of it as a physical address and a physical...
Safeguard Defenders. This is definitely a lady. Laura Harth of Safeguard Defenders. What the fuck is Safeguard Defenders?
A physical address and a physical police station where people will be dragged into.
More than 100 worldwide, and this isn't a covert operation. They're proudly reported on by Chinese state-owned media. They call them service stations
An
to help
NGO
Chinese
started by a
nationals
Swede
with
and an American
non-criminal
in Spain.
activities, like eye exams for driver's license renewals, so they don't have to fly back. But some are skeptical.
I don't believe them because it's been done for the last how many years?
Vancouver Society in Support of Democratic Movement.
So I don't believe why they have to create such a
You know what I mean? And then this is what we do in these moments. Well, we interviewed this reactionary Chinese person who's part of the vast network of anti-China NGOs, official dissident groups, to explain that they don't believe that any of this is true.
Station.
Tang works with dissidents who have fled from China. To her, the stations feel like an open threat from the Communist Party.
If you dare to say anything against them, we have a tool, or we have something or some shop here to able to do something about you and your family in China.
But they haven't done
Defenders
anything.
claims they have evidence of police station personnel persuading
But they
suspects
might,
who are abroad to go back to China to face justice. RCMP won't say why they visited the Friendship Center, only sending a statement which reads in part, they are investigating criminal activity at the so-called police stations nationally and is aware that foreign states may seek to intimidate or harm communities or individuals within Canada. No one at the society...
And of course, I would never co-sign this, but it's an interesting comment. I would support China having police stations to black bag people like her. But I mean, this is a lot of these accusations. This is what they're like from these official dissident groups, right? They're like, we spoke out against Hong Kong, and we feel very intimidated by the fact. But nothing has happened though. They could, they've got these police stations, and I speak out against them, and they could follow me, or they could do this, or they could do that. But they have not done that though. Nothing has happened. That's kind of seems to be the key point that's getting lost here. Nothing is actually going on. But they might. But something could happen. You never know. If you speak ill of China, the optometrist will fail your eye test, your evil communist eye test. That's right.
He answered when we knocked, and calls went to voicemail.
After leaving a message, you can hang up or press pound for more options.
Hi there, this is Leanne Young. Its website says the society strengthens ties between people from Wenzhou and Canada while proudly supporting the Chinese government. That's the society's president donating to the consulate at the height of the pandemic.
Yeah, you take pictures with Congress members and they're like, I think China might get the idea that I'm trying to overthrow them. It's like, you are trying to do that. Yeah, this hard-hitting reporting. I left them a voicemail. I wrote you, but you still ain't calling.
And their reach extends into domestic politics. Dinners inviting guests like Liberal MP Wilson Miao and Richmond councillor Chak Au seen here.
The fact that
Oh, and you see what I mean? It's like then when you do have an MP that oh my God, they had these ties with the Friendship Center. There must be something going on. Like this climate. I laugh about it and we joke around about it, but it genuinely is kind of scary. We're creating this situation, or it's already been created, where if you're part of the Chinese diaspora, if you're a Chinese Canadian MP, if you say one positive thing about China, if you push back on any of these accusations, you're going to get accused now of having dual allegiances, dual loyalties. You're being intimidated or you're being controlled by the CPC. That's the climate that's being created here. It's really, really dangerous. And I would like more people to start recognizing this.
I have
join in some of the social events organized by one particular
The
group.
musings of
Doesn't mean that
racist
I
Karens and
endorse
shady human
whatever,
rights groups are reported as
they're
real
doing.
news. Yeah, absolutely.
And in an email, Mao's constituency office says he receives a number of event invitations every year.
Yeah, now you're questioning this guy. Oh, did you go to this event at the Chinese Friendship Center? What's up with that? And now you're forcing this guy to like answer questions about this, as if there's some nefarious thing that's going on.
Wenzhou Friendship Society has made headlines before, accused of buying votes during the 2018 election. Mounties investigated then, but found no one willing to come forward. The outcome
So there was
of this
no evidence of these baseless
is still
accusations.
to be seen. Leanne Young, CBC News,
Who is
Richmond.
making these accusations? Well, we don't know.
Above this noodle shop in New York's Chinatown,
This is
agents of
CBC,
the
so this
Chinese
is going to
Communist
New
Government.
York now. This is 3 months ago. So this is like been a big. This narrative has been promoted all across international media in Canada and the United States over the last couple of months. Yeah, Vice 5 years ago. China's harassing poor Mr. Wang Gui. Vice today. He's a criminal.
Operated an overseas police station for years. There are more than 100 of them worldwide. They don't usually look like a police station. They may only be back rooms, but they're staffed by Chinese government officials. The police stations, along with so-called aid stations across the U.S., are used by the Chinese government to harass and threaten pro-democracy Chinese immigrants
According to
to
who?
stop speaking out against the regime and go back to China, even kidnapping them if necessary. One of their targets is Li Jianji, a pro-democracy activist who was tortured repeatedly in Chinese psychiatric hospitals before he was able to flee to the U.S., where the persecution has continued. Xi, who does not speak English, told us Chinese government hitmen in the Los Angeles area have tried to kill him 3 times, twice with a car and once by stabbing him in the neck, calling him a traitor as they fled the scene. Chinese government agents and supporters...
So that's completely unconfirmed. Just total accusations from this official dissident who's engaged in this process of trying to like destabilize the government in the country that he doesn't live, who's getting mental health care. And he's just throwing out all these kinds of accusations that get reported as fact. I'm sure, yeah, they're being stabbed. Yeah, and how many of these people are connected to Falun Gong? Yeah, you can just say whatever they want, for sure. What the hell is CBN? What is CBN News? I think I read it as CBC at first. What is CBN? Is this like... Okay, so this is like a totally like reactionary news thing. It's the Christian Broadcasting Network. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm sure this does have ties to Falun Gong as well. I think that's the question that we need to be asking. How much is Falun Gong implicated in a lot of these things? There's CBN doing this report. Yeah, just dealing with this one dissident, advertising the claims that he's making about being tortured and attacked as fact. Here's these safeguard defenders who are responsible for promoting this story about the police stations. Here's all the different stories they got going on right now. China's expanding use of exit bans. What happened to Chinese COVID citizen journalists? Tortured in secret Chinese jail, Japanese man describes his ordeal. The disappearance of Bao Fan. Complaint against Chinese state TV filed in France. About Us. Safeguard Defenders is a human rights NGO founded in late 2016 that undertakes and supports local field activities that contribute to the protection of basic rights, promote the rule of law, and enhance the ability of local civil society and human rights defenders in some of the most hostile environments in Asia. At any given time, Safeguard Defenders is running about a dozen programs in target countries, which doesn't count as interference also. From our small head office in Madrid, Spain, we work with local partners who include teachers, lawyers, local independent media organizations, and civil organizations engaged in the promotion and protection of human rights and the rule of law. The story behind Safeguard Defenders goes back to 2009, the year when a small NGO called China Action was founded in Beijing by human rights activists Peter Dahlin from Sweden and Michael Castor from the US, and a small group of Chinese rights lawyers and other human rights defenders. These are all the people that are involved in the team. Always interested to know where the funding is coming from as well. Some dude from Sweden bringing human rights to China. That's right. That's exactly right. And there's Peter Dahlin, director of Safeguard Defenders. With all promoting nonstop stories about nabbing spies and all just nonstop stream of China bad content. A guy from a monarchy living in a monarchy fighting for human rights in China. That's right. Well, yeah, and all of this is just, you see the way like human rights have been weaponized, how this whole like NGO industrial complex is a arm of Western imperialism and the function that is, and the way that that works in conjunction with the media. You know, all these human rights NGOs. Now, anytime these stories come up in the media, you know, they get thrown on there as experts. They're the primary source for all of these stories. And of course, you know, does the media ever actually meaningfully make any effort whatsoever to, you know, push back on any of these narratives? Of course not. Folks, I've been going on here about 3.5 hours. I do got to get going. I got to go pick up my kid from school soon. Fairly low in the old sub goal today. So I'd just like to take another brief moment just to remind people that if you think that this perspective that I'm offering here is important, and I would argue that it is, considering the way how one-sided this is in our media establishment in Canada. If you think that this viewpoint is important and you want to support the work that I do here on Twitch to articulate this kind of different perspective and try to debunk some of these like narratives about China and other official enemy countries of Western imperialism, I do encourage you to please, if you can, subscribe. Please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS over here on twitch.tv. Join the community. Get all the emotes that you can get from subscribing to this platform. It is $5 per month. It is completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account. You can gift subs or friend coin, or there's a number of different ways that you can support the work that I do here. But please, if you can, help the number go up a little bit more. Subscribe to TRRS and help support the work that I do here on twitch.tv. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate it a lot. And when you do subscribe, we become friends. We are actually friends. It's not parasocial. It's real. It's a real friendship. And that's what a subscription buys you. And not only are you friends with me, you're friends with everyone else in this community. It's a community united by camaraderie and friendship and mutual respect and understanding. We're all isolated. We're all alienated right now. And when you subscribe to this community and join this community, it alleviates that ever so slightly. So if you can, folks, please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS. I really appreciate it a lot. And ideally, I would like to leave today, after today's stream, with maybe slightly more than the 8 out of 35 subs, which would be by far the lowest amount, I think, since the time that I started doing this show. Would it shock you to discover that Peter Dellin is also a Venezuela hater? No, it would not shock me.
You can count on me.
At all.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
A lot of anti-Iran content on the timeline as well. Thank you, Irate Lump, for the 28 months tier 1. Thank you, Irate Lump. Nothing bothers those anti-communists more than slubbing to rib. I couldn't agree more. That's the one thing that the man doesn't want you to do. You know, the man wants you to tune into CBC or CBS or read the Epic Times or whatever it is and get this distorted, fucked up perception about all these narratives. Secret Chinese police are going to take me away. They're going to black bag me and nab me in the middle of the night if a few more subs don't come in here.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Pubic Mouth. Thank you, new valued community member, Pubic Mouth, for the gifted sub. Very first gifted sub in the channel. Pubic Mouth, I appreciate it a lot. And I hope everyone does tolerate these moments when I've got to try and shill a little bit for the stream. I hope everyone understands.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Horse-drawn portrait, thank you very much for the 7 months of tier 1. Thank you, I really appreciate that. Horse-drawn portrait. Thank you for that. Just a few generous chatters could get us up there enough. Just a few generous chatters could not only... Shilling is always peak content. It's just wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful. I love having to do this, believe me. I absolutely love it. It's not degrading or humiliating in any way to do it. It's just fantastic. It's great for me, first of all. I know it's great for you as well. I know it's highly entertaining for everyone in these moments. Oh, Leaping Larry, we watched Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang.
Talk you through all this.
Was it yesterday? It was yesterday or the day before. We just watched it. It's a couple times we watched
count
that.
on me. You're gonna
for
have
sure.
Good
It's
old
really
Rob
important to look
through
at.
all this.
Johnny, thank you very much. Thank you for the 2 gifted subs. Subversive History, another great streamer that people should be following. I love the Subversive History stream.
Have good old Rob.
Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Anonymous Gifter, for gifting a sub to Noy Obama as well.
You can count on
thank
me.
you, Anonymous
have
Gifter.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And for gifting another 2 subs as well. Thank you, Anonymous Gifter. I really appreciate that. As I often say, folks, you know what I'm going to say. The most Christ-like of all sub-gifters, the Anonymous Gifter. They don't want the accolades. They don't want the shout-outs. They just want to support the content. Okay, so Subversive History streaming tonight at 6 p.m. I really encourage everyone to follow Subversive History and watch that stream because it's fantastic. Is our Canadian streamer rooting for a team this NHL Finals? Not really. Not a big hockey fan. If the Habs are in the playoffs, I would probably be cheering for them. Maybe Edmonton. I guess I still have kind of nostalgia for the Edmonton dynasty days, so maybe the Oilers, but I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not emotionally invested at all. We're going to do our best. We're pretty dumb when it comes to theory. Well, so am I. I mean, it's been fun, I think, to learn about this stuff along with all of you. It really has. Anonymous Gifter watches CBN. That's right. Maybe this is coming from the Anonymous Gifter is coming from one of these Chinese police stations. They see someone, finally one of these Wu Maos, right? I think that's what they call me. One of these Wu Maos is out here defending us. We got to throw this guy some Bezos bucks here. I want to see the Leafs beat 2 teams from horrible Florida. Well, looks like it's not going to happen. They blew it. The Leafs blew it. They had a golden opportunity. The Bruins were out. They finally got past the Lightning, and now they're fucking blowing it. Oh, and thank you, Soviet Sasha, for the 50 friend coin as well. As a child of NPR and PBS listeners, I understand the grind set better than anybody. I guess that's true. I guess that's what we all have to do in these media, in this media environment. So do I have any other takers, folks? I got a few more minutes here. I got a few more minutes to hang out. And I sure would appreciate it if we could get a few more generous chatters to support the work that I do here on Twitch. You know, I'm on here day in, day out. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3-4 hours a day doing this stream. I absolutely love to do it. It's actually, I feel incredibly lucky and blessed to just be able to earn a small living from that. It's not something that I take lightly. But I would sure love to see a few more generous chatters supporting the work that I do here on Twitch today. As you know, a gift sub of 5 subs or more, a batch sub, does not only does it trigger a funny alert of me doing a dance, a Quebecois cultural dance.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through
known
all
as
this.
the Matante dance. But it also rockets you right up to the very top of the friendship triangle system.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Dr. Maggot, for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Iron, as well. Thank you, Iron Forward. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate all the support, folks. I really, really do. I think I'm going to switch up some of the alerts because for a while I made that 10 gifted sub alert, which some people like, and I think for a while I was getting a couple of 10 gifted subs just because the novelty hadn't worn off yet. I think I need to make more of those. Because for a while I was getting like every stream I was getting like a 10 sub gift just so people could see it. Hello, C-Serum. It's going okay. It's going all right. I'm going to go soon. I got to go pick up my kids soon. And Mustache Imperial, no problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever. Believe me. I have to always walk this line between trying to like do what I have to do to make a little living from doing the show. And of course, I would never want to like guilt and shame people that like are just not able to contribute, which I totally understand. I don't really contribute a lot to other Twitch streams either because I don't really have the disposable income to do that. So I do try to like walk that line. I want a 10 sub alert of Rob chugging a rain on the TRRS. The TRRS. I mean, you already have a rain sub animation. Okay. Well, I think I better go. But again, folks, I really appreciate all the support. I really appreciate that people could come and watch the stream today. Your browser is not currently supported. I know for sure that it is, though. I know it is. What about a sped up footage of you housing down a hoagie or something? I mean, I did have an animation of that. For a while, I experimented with that, but I went with the aviators and the leather jacket, ultimately. He's not undersubbed, he's overexploited. Thank you. Thank you, Gen X Bushy.
Concept of Resident Evil 4 has the Garrador, a blind enemy that finds Leon based on
Turtle Beach. Oh, three Turtle Beach headsets. Jesus Christ. I thought we got ripped off.
Let's rate our friend Hildebeest.
Hell. 3 of them. Yeah, they're awful.
Maybe Hildy can talk a little bit more about like Alberta and the wildfires going on right now and some of the delusional reactionary conspiracy theories that are floating around about that, which is something that I would like to cover more. I would like to do a whole like Alberta episode at some point.
You can count on me.
Plenty of stuff to get into.
Rob to talk.
Oh goodness,
through
Gen
all
X
this.
Bushy, bailing me out again at the last minute. Thank you, Gen X Bushy. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I really appreciate all the support.
Brand of audio equipment. Okay. Well, I will say.
A lot of Danielle Smith in the content mine. That's true. Let's get my goodbye music before we get going here.
A lot cheaper, but I've got my money worth out of them because you guys know I wear these an awful stinking lot, so I have to have something that's very, very comfortable.
Thanks again, folks. I'll be back tomorrow.
Physically hurt, not like sound going in, but physically hurt because maybe I was jamming them into a board or something. I don't know. But
I'll be back tomorrow.
they just hurt. I didn't like them. And then, I mean, they were crap. They were like $10. They were crap.
Okay, I agree. It's time to make it happen, Johnny.
Are you